Chapter 3795. The Cliff of Death. Located at the edge of the dark desolation, this place was deathly silent. It was said that a fierce battle had broken out here, and even the underworld had stepped in. Hence, it was also called a forbidden land. This was the most dangerous place in the origin world, and it was also one of the forbidden lands that all martial artists would turn pale at the mention of. Usually, very few people would come here. Of course, those powerful and monstrous martial artists would come here to look for treasures. After all, this place was filled with the remains of powerful martial artists. A dark war had once broken out and swept through the world, and countless powerful martial artists had died here. Of course, some powerful martial artists had fallen into a deep slumber, and some would occasionally awaken. In short, the Cliff of Death was very dangerous. The closest place to the Cliff of Death was the Blue River Prefecture territory. Among the many prefectures, the Blue River Prefecture was considered below average. Because it was connected to the Cliff of Death, the dark aura within the Cliff of Death constantly seeped in. As a result, no one dared to set foot in the Blue River Prefecture territory. Two figures stood in front of a brightly colored dividing line. If there was someone here, they would definitely recognize one of them. He was once a proud son of heaven, sword madman. His cultivation in the way of the sword was outstanding, and he was known as the most promising expert in the way of the sword during the Age of Chaos. Unfortunately, he was now controlled by the Ghost Emperor and had lost his mind. He held a long sword in his hand, and his body emitted a terrifying sword aura. He looked at the soil that was filled with dark aura and said, "What are we waiting for? Let's go to the Cliff of Death and find the ghost artifact." The beast ancestor shook his head. "Things are not as simple as you think. Since we are working for the Ghost Emperor, we must succeed. We must confirm that the person who knows about the ghost artifact has not spread the news." He had lived for countless years and was calmer than Sword Lunatic. "Then, are we going to keep waiting here?" Sword Lunatic asked. "The Cliff of Death is very dangerous. We can secretly control some of the devouring demon clan members and have them scout the path for us," the beast ancestor said. "This would increase their chances of success." "How troublesome." Sword Lunatic shook his head and did not say anything else. In the following period of time, 9th rank saints mysteriously disappeared from the Blue River Prefecture territory. Although 9th rank saints were not as dazzling as invincible saints, they were still famous figures. Their disappearance had attracted the attention of the Blue River Prefecture. The city lord's residents had already given the order to investigate this matter thoroughly, causing everyone to panic. A few months later, Sword Lunatic was discussing a strategy with the monster race. Suddenly, their communication jade pendant rang and they received some information. Suddenly, the demonic beast patriarch's expression changed greatly, and he stood up. "What happened?" Sword Lunatic asked. "There are two pieces of news," the demonic beast clan's ancestor said. "The first news came from our spies in the city lord's mansion. They said that Blue River Prefecture's mansion master has already come out of seclusion. He also paid attention to the mysterious disappearance of the 9th step sage and is preparing to follow up personally." "So you're saying that the Blue River Prefecture is no longer safe?" Sword Lunatic asked with a sidelong glance. The old ancestor of the demonic beast race nodded. Sword Lunatic continued asking, "What about the other news?" "The men of sacrifice at the Cliff of Death sent back news that they saw other cultivators at the Cliff of Death." "What?" Sword Lunatic's expression changed, and he immediately thought of Fang Chen. Could it be that he really leaked the news and got there first? "I'm not sure, but since we can't stay in the Blue River Prefecture any longer, I think it's time for us to enter the Cliff of Death," the demonic beast clan's ancestor said. Crossing the dividing line, the barren land extended all the way to the Cliff of Death. The Cliff of Death was filled with an eerie and terrifying aura. Even a 9th step sage would feel oppressed, and those who were weak would die without a doubt. Under a towering tree, Fang Chen leaned on it. His clothes were somewhat tattered, and he looked battered and exhausted. As expected of the Cliff of Death, so oppressive. He would never have dreamed that the drop of blood that Fu Jian had left behind to help him escape from the black hole would actually send him to the Cliff of Death. Could this be the will of the heavens? The only pity was that after entering the black hole, he was attacked fiercely by the ghost mansion master, causing him to be severely injured. He had to recuperate for a few months before barely recovering a bit of his cultivation. Now, his cultivation had just reached the 5 elements sacred realm. In other words, his cultivation had dropped in that serious injury, and he had almost died. Fortunately, the blood that Fu Jian had left behind was too profound and had saved him. I need to recover my cultivation as soon as possible. Otherwise, I won't be able to survive in the cliff of death. Fang Chen frowned and pondered. He had been running around like a stray dog for the past few months. From time to time, there would be remnant thoughts that would try to take over his body. Fortunately, he had escaped quickly enough. However, if this continued, he wouldn't be able to hold on. Buzz. He raised his hand, and the 4 origins circled around him. His mind trembled, and his eyes lit up as he thought of a possibility. Since ancient times, very few people have been able to comprehend all 5 origins at the same time. Fang Chen muttered to himself. If I can comprehend all 5 origins, I'll definitely be able to recover my lost cultivation. Upon having this thought, Fang Chen's heart surged with excitement. He had already comprehended the origin of metal, water, fire, and earth. However, he was still unable to comprehend the origin of wood. He raised his head and scanned his surroundings. He was surrounded by a dense forest with towering trees. The presence of the wood element is very strong. It's perfect for me to comprehend the origin of wood, Fang Chen said. Even though he knew it was extremely difficult to comprehend the 5th origin, he still had to try. Otherwise, he would only be waiting for his death. How long would it take for him to recover his cultivation? Besides, what else could he ask for in such a harsh environment? Phew! Fang Chen took a deep breath and sat on the ground with his legs crossed. The 4 origins were unleashed from his feet and spread across the ground. It soon arrived at a towering tree. Absorb. Fang Chen let out a soft cry, and the wood-attributed essence of this towering tree was absorbed by him. Such a strong life force, Fang Chen murmured. At the same time, the patriarch of the monster race and sword lunatic also came to the death cliff. They had some information from the Ghost Emperor, and with the information from their men of sacrifice, they had a preliminary understanding of the death cliff. They moved quickly, trying to find the cultivator that the men of sacrifice saw. Find that cultivator and see if it's that guy, Sword Lunatic said coldly. Don't worry. We have an innate advantage in the death cliff. He won't be able to escape, the patriarch of the monster race said. Chapter 3796. The Cliff of Death represented the most dangerous and terrifying place in the origin world. At the same time, it also represented the end of death. It was said that a powerful army of the underworld had once swept through this place with unparalleled momentum, wanting to dominate it. However, due to some special reasons, they were defeated in the end. After that, this place was shrouded in a terrifying aura of death all year round. Times changed, but the Cliff of Death remained the same. Even though the origin world was the territory of the Devouring Devil Clan, any Devouring Devil Clan member would pale at the mention of the Cliff of Death. In the past, when their clan had just established the origin world, the Devouring Devil Clan's patriarch had fought a group of experts alone and had almost died at the Cliff of Death. They viewed the Cliff of Death as an ominous place. Fang Chen, who had been severely injured by the Ghost Manor Lord, had fallen to the Cliff of Death in the space-time turbulence under the protection of the drop of blood left behind by Supreme Master Fu Jian. However, due to his severe injuries, he had fallen from the Saint Realm. Fortunately, he had comprehended 4 of the 5 elemental origins, the foundation of heaven and earth. He had grasped the method to make the 4 different powers compatible with his body. Therefore, when he had almost recovered from his injuries, he had absorbed the power of heaven and earth and returned to the 5 elemental Saint Realm. However, at this point, he was at his wit's end. After all, his primordial spirit was injured due to the drop in his cultivation base. The only way to quickly recover his cultivation base was to comprehend the 5th origin, which was also the last origin of wood. Buzz. In the dense forest, the 4 origin powers continued to spread through the thick earth. With Fang Chen as the center, they formed a huge sphere. Inside this sphere, the 4 different origin powers crisscrossed. Although the repulsion force between them was not strong, it was impossible for them to fuse together. However, they had a common enemy at this moment, and that was the extremely dense origin of wood that was escaping from the towering trees in the dense forest. The origin of wood grew and multiplied endlessly. As long as there were trees, the origin of wood would continue to exist and grow denser. The current situation was that the 4 origin powers were jointly suppressing the origin of wood, trying to force it to submit. Buzz. Taking this opportunity, Fang Chen wholeheartedly immersed himself in comprehending the origin of wood. Although he knew this path was very difficult, he had no other choice. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. For Saint Realm experts, 3 years was just the blink of an eye. Their time was no longer calculated in years, but in epochs. Fang Chen had only been cultivating for a short period of time. That was why the past 3 years seemed so boring. In fact, in these 3 years, the patriarch of the monster race and lunatic Jian had just entered the death cliff. It took them a total of 3 years to cross the wasteland that was permeated by the deathly aura of the death cliff. Voila! Just as he entered the cliff of death, Sword Lunatic greedily sucked in a breath of the deathly aura in the air. What a thick aura of death! If Master were to cultivate here, he would definitely be able to recover to his peak state. Jian Lunzi said greedily. The Ghost Emperor loved the aura of death the most. In this kind of environment, not only did his strength increase explosively, but his cultivation speed also increased explosively. It was equivalent to having a powerful boost. For experts like them, a single level of enhancement meant that they were invincible. The Sword Lunatic and the Demonic Beast Patriarch, who were being controlled by the Ghost Emperor, had also started to like the aura of death. Let's get down to business first. The Demonic Beast Patriarch urged. Even though they had more information about the Death Cliff than the others, this was the Death Cliff after all. It was a place that had once caused the devouring demon Patriarch to suffer a setback. This place was filled with danger. If they had followed the Ghost Emperor here, they might have nothing to fear. However, there were only the 2 of them at the moment. If a half-step Chaotic Supreme suddenly appeared, they would all die. This place is very dangerous. We have to find the ghost weapon as soon as possible and leave this place. The Demonic Beast Patriarch said in a deep voice. He could feel that the void was filled with an incomparably oppressive aura, as if danger would appear at any time. Roar. Just as he finished speaking, a furious roar of a beast suddenly came from the distant horizon. The 2 of them looked at each other and their expressions changed greatly. What did it mean to have a beast roar in this kind of environment? Let's go! Sword Lunatic shouted out hysterically. At the same time, his body emitted a dazzling sword light as he instantly disappeared into the darkness. The ancestor of the demonic beasts transformed back into his original form and followed closely behind. Rip! The void was torn apart. Dark clouds covered the sky and the earth shook. In the blink of an eye, this area would be destroyed by the destructive storm. Boom! When this small part of the void was completely destroyed, a huge monster with 9 heads appeared out of thin air. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it sucked at the void that had been destroyed. The dark aura was instantly sucked dry. After doing all this, it turned around and left. If anyone was here, they would be incomparably shocked. This was because the void that was destroyed was gradually restored to its original state not long after. The endless aura was hidden in the void of destruction, as if it was resonating with the power of heaven and earth. Not long after, the void of destruction was renewed and the area became quiet again. Outside, in the territory of the Blue River Prefecture, the primordial beast patriarch sent Princess Huang to the territory of the Blue River Prefecture and said with a smile, "After crossing the Death Mountain range, you will reach the Death Cliff. Due to some reasons, I am unable to step into the Death Cliff. You have to take good care of yourself." "Master," Princess Huang called out. "Remember, in the Death Cliff, the void is filled with vicious aura. It will be destroyed at any time. However, after it is destroyed, it will automatically be reborn. It is very repulsive of the 5 elemental origins, but at the same time, it is the best place to comprehend the 5 elemental origins, especially the wood elemental origins. The old man said, "After you enter the death cliff, if you have time, try to comprehend the 5 elemental origins. Remember, there is no rush to find the ghost artifact. You must ensure your own safety before proceeding with the next step of the plan." "Master, don't worry. This disciple will definitely bring back the ghost artifact." Princess Huang nodded heavily. The will of the Sky Dragon Sovereign had once said that after they found the ghost artifact, they should bring it back to the primordial beast patriarch. Her master had also asked her to find the ghost artifact. Thinking about it, the ghost artifact was very important. She must use this opportunity to successfully obtain the recognition of the primordial beast patriarch. "All right, you can go now." The old man stroked his beard and said. After Princess Huang's figure gradually disappeared into the distance, the old man's pitch-black eyes looked through the endless desolate land and looked at the death cliff. His expression changed greatly. After a long time, he sighed and retracted his gaze. "How much longer do I have to wait?" he muttered to himself. His words were filled with endless bitterness. Chapter 3797. At the beginning of the world, chaos was divided into yin and yang, and then the 5 elemental origins. Yin and yang were the foundation of heaven and earth, and the 5 elemental origins were the foundation of time and space. Since ancient times, there were very few people who could comprehend all 5 elemental origins. At least in recent times, there had never been anyone who could do it, and it only existed in legends. Now, Fang Chen had comprehended 4 elemental origins, and only the wood origin was left. It was also the most difficult origin to comprehend. The wood origin was an extension of life. Sitting cross-legged in the dense forest, Fang Chen could clearly sense the wood elemental aura emitted from the towering trees. Huff! After Fang Chen absorbed a thick wisp of wood elemental aura into his body, he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and a joyful smile appeared on his face. After comprehending for so long, he finally had some insights. If he was given more time to continue comprehending, he might really comprehend the wood origin. As expected of the wood origin, Fang Chen couldn't help but sigh. He had read some ancient books that recorded detailed information about the 5 elemental origins. Amongst them, the wood quintessence was the most miraculous quintessence. So long as one possessed the wood quintessence, one would be able to develop an endless source of vitality. In other words, so long as one's soul core didn't collapse completely, then one would basically be at the level of immortality. Of course, this was also the premise that one's origin spirit wasn't completely destroyed, so immortality was relative and not absolute. As for absolute immortality, perhaps only by stepping into the supreme realm could one pursue it. It was too illusory. Thinking of Fujian Supreme, Sky Dragon Supreme, Ghost Emperor, and other powerhouses who eventually turned into a handful of yellow soil and died between heaven and earth, was there really immortality in this world? Suddenly, a thought appeared in Fang Chen's mind. What was the limit of the 5 elemental origins? Or rather, what was the limit of the wood origin? Perhaps, it really was immortality. Fang Chen shook his head hard. Now, his top priority was to restore his cultivation to the 9th level saint, and not think about such unrealistic things. Continue comprehending. Fang Chen closed his eyes and began to comprehend. However, when he was fully immersed in it, he suddenly discovered a strange aura seeping out from the ground. It followed the wood attribute aura and entered his mind. Dong! His mind was shaken, and he staggered and fell to the ground. What happened? Fang Chen panicked. What was that strange aura? Why did it quietly enter his mind? After so many years, someone has finally come here. An ancient voice echoed in Fang Chen's mind. Who are you? Fang Chen asked in a deep voice. Little fellow, don't worry. I have no ill intentions towards you. The old voice sounded again. This time, Fang Chen was sure that the voice originated from that strange aura. In other words, the owner of the voice was most likely hiding underground. Fang Chen activated all his strength, trying to force this strange power out of his body, but he failed. This power contained endless power, and he was helpless. Little fellow, you are too impatient. The old voice said, you can come here and awaken me with the power of the 4 origins. It can be said that we are fated. After a pause, the old voice hurriedly said, "I am the Wood King, and I control all the wood attribute power in the world. I was the most promising person to step into the chaotic supremacy realm." Unfortunately, at the end, the old voice clearly contained a trace of disappointment. Wood King? Fang Chen frowned. He had never heard of this name. Could it be an expert of a certain era? The most promising person to step into the chaotic supremacy realm? Didn't this mean that he was a half step into the chaotic supremacy realm? Thinking of this, Fang Chen was shocked. Back then, I studied the wood origin and almost reached perfection. Unfortunately, I failed at the last step and died, leaving behind only a wisp of my consciousness, said the old voice. From what I can see, you have the 4 great essences in your body. The only thing you lack is the wood essence. I am very interested in you. If you are willing, this old man can help you comprehend the wood essence, and allow you to become the first person in countless years to possess 5 essences. Hearing this, Fang Chen's heart moved slightly, and he hesitated. Anyone would be tempted by the 5 origins, but why did the Wood King appear at this time and give him so many benefits unconditionally? There was something strange going on. Fang Chen was silent and did not agree. What? You don't believe me? The Wood King was a little angry. Do you know what the end of the wood origin is? Back then, I almost reached the end of the wood origin. Senior, you misunderstand. Fang Chen spread his hands and said. At the same time, he was on guard and stared at the strange power in his mind. If the Wood King had any ill intentions, he would activate his perfect bloodline and expel it immediately. At this time, it was more important to stay alive. Sigh, the Wood King sighed and said, "The end of the wood origin is transcendence. When comprehended to the extreme, one can transcend the heavenly Tao. The supremacy realm is just a small hurdle in one's life." Buzz. Fang Chen felt that all the towering trees in the dense forest began to sway and rustle. At the same time, he felt that the towering trees were constantly releasing wood elemental aura. It passed through the ground and gathered together, rushing towards his feet quickly. He got up and took a few steps back, staring at the ground vigilantly. I, the Wood King, was famous in the world back then, but now I am only left with a wisp of my soul. I am unwilling to accept this and only want to pass on my legacy. Are you willing to accept my legacy? The Wood King's aura continued to increase. The vast wood elemental aura forced Fang Chen into a corner. Senior, I have not figured out what kind of legacy it is. Isn't it too hasty to agree so carelessly? Fang Chen said. Moreover, I am not talented enough. I am afraid it will be difficult for me to fully comprehend your wood elemental legacy. So please find someone else. Fang Chen tactfully rejected, but the Wood King did not stop. Mage, it is your honor that I have spoken so much to you. A mere first-level holy king dares to act rashly in front of me? Sure enough, the Wood King bared his fangs. The wood elemental aura began to crazily suppress Fang Chen. At the same time, the Wood King's aura in his mind began to madly disturb Fang Chen's mind. Get lost. Fang Chen growled and released his vermilion bird bloodline. Divine power descended. Ah! A miserable scream came from underground. Then, the Wood King's aura was instantly drowned out by the vermilion bird bloodline. The wood elemental aura under Fang Chen's feet also receded like the tide. Vermilion bird bloodline? The Wood King's exclamation came from underground. Chapter 3798. The suppression of the bloodline made the Wood King feel a great sense of danger. He exclaimed. He didn't expect Fang Chen to have such a powerful bloodline. At this moment, an angry roar came from underground. Kid, you've successfully angered me. The Wood King roared. He hated the vermilion bird bloodline, especially the supreme divine might contained in the bloodline. It made his remnant soul feel like it was about to shatter. Dong dong dong. The earth trembled, and a rhythmic sound came. This was a sound that Fang Chen was very familiar with. When he was comprehending the origin of earth, he sat on the ground and felt the rhythm of the earth. The Wood King transmitted a powerful force through the thick earth, wanting to tear apart Fang Chen's defense and suppress him. However, he miscalculated. Fang Chen had the vermilion bird bloodline protecting him, and the origin of earth surrounded him. The rhythm of the earth couldn't harm him at all. Moreover, the Wood King was just a remnant soul, and he didn't have much strength left. Crack! Fang Chen opened his palm and slammed it on the ground. Suddenly, a miserable cry came from underground. "Stop!" the Wood King screamed. The vermilion bird bloodline suppressed his remnant soul, and he couldn't use his full strength. This led to him being suppressed by Fang Chen. "Mph, you just wanted to trick me into accepting your inheritance, and now you want me to stop?" Fang Chen sneered. He had experienced and seen too much since he started cultivating in the ancient Sword Continent's Shungfeng nation. He ignored the Wood King's cry for help and continued to use the vermilion bird bloodline to suppress the Wood King. At the same time, he attacked the Wood King's remnant soul through the origin of earth. Soon, the Wood King's remnant soul was completely defeated. "I can't accept this," the Wood King let out a miserable cry. His remnant soul shattered with a bang, and the layer of silver frost covering the ground also disappeared. One could vaguely hear the Wood King's angry roar in the void. Buzz! Through the origin of earth, Fang Chen discovered a silver ball of light left behind by the Wood King's remnant will after it shattered. With a thought, he brought it out of the ground through the earthen yellow power. Hiss hiss hiss. When the silver ball of light fell into his palm, it emitted an endless aura. "This is..." Fang Chen was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed. This silver ball of light contained an extremely strong power of the wood origin. He could use it to comprehend the wood origin. The Wood King went for wool and came home shorn. He wanted to trick Fang Chen into accepting his legacy, then find a chance to possess Fang Chen and achieve rebirth. Who would have thought that he would be suppressed by Fang Chen in the end? The silver ball of light that he had worked so hard to condense also fell into Fang Chen's hands. "With this silver ball of light, I will be able to better comprehend the essence of wood," Fang Chen said excitedly. He gripped the silver ball of light tightly, closed his eyes, and began to comprehend. However, the commotion just now had alarmed some of the surrounding demonic beasts. Roar! A blood-red lion opened its bloody mouth and looked into the distance. Its eyes, which were as big as gongs, glared angrily at Fang Chen. Outsider? To it, as long as it was not of the same race, it was a foreign race. Over the years, it had guarded this place, and countless foreign races had died in its hands. "If I devour 10 more foreign races, I will be able to successfully evolve." The blood-red lion's huge face was filled with greed. Its figure flashed and rushed towards Fang Chen. Roar roar roar! The blood-red lion made a unique sound as if it was summoning its companions. When its voice spread out, all the blood-red lions in the area pricked up their ears to listen. Following that, they also let out roars and charged into the distance like a tide of beasts. The blood-red lion leader stood 1,000 miles away from Fang Chen. Its eyes were as large as gongs as it gazed at Fang Chen, who was comprehending the origin of wood. HMPH, an outsider wants to comprehend the origin of wood. He's courting death. The blood-red lion leader sneered. It knew better than anyone that trying to comprehend the wood origin here was simply courting death. Although the wood origin here was very dense and seemed to be the best place to comprehend the wood origin, it knew very well that this place was not friendly to origins, especially the wood origin. If anyone dared to comprehend the wood origin here, they would definitely die. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Soon, the clansmen had gathered here. "Leader, should we attack?" The blood-red lion leader shook its head. Its eyes were deep and flickered with a strange light. "These foreign races are very cunning. Don't act rashly. If he dares to comprehend the wood origin here, he will die sooner or later. We will set up an inescapable net here and wait for him. Leader, our death cliff doesn't seem to be very peaceful recently." Another clansman said, "I heard that the Ghost Emperor's ghost artifact is about to appear. Many foreign races have come here for it." Hearing the words ghost artifact, the blood-red lion leader's expression changed. However, it quickly regained its composure. The ghost artifact is very important. Back then, the Ghost Emperor caused a great disaster. Now that the ghost artifact has appeared, he wants to take it away. What a joke. Our clan shouldn't interfere in this matter. Let's just wait and see. Those old fellows won't let the Ghost Emperor go. The appearance of his ghost artifact is very likely a trap set up by those old fellows to lure the Ghost Emperor here. The clansmen were very puzzled. What kind of great mistake did the Ghost Emperor commit? Why wasn't the leader willing to talk about it? All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Our target is this foreign race. The blood-red lion leader said in a deep voice. Then, it issued an order. The clansmen followed its instructions, constantly changing their positions and setting up an inescapable net. Fang Chen, who was in the heart of the dense forest, didn't notice the approaching danger at all. He held the silver ball in his hand and was fully immersed in comprehending the wood origin. Wang. An endless aura revolved around his body. It was as if a layer of armor was draped over his body. At this time, Fang Chen's eyes were closed. His divine sense was immersed in the silver ball, as if he wanted to disintegrate it. At the same time, in a place extremely far away, Princess Huang, who was wearing a white dress, quietly entered the cliff of death. Who? Her delicate body trembled slightly, and her white cheeks were covered with sweat. At this moment, she was panting heavily, and her chest was heaving up and down. Is this the cliff of death? Princess Huang whispered. The cliff of death was much more dangerous than she had imagined. The aura of death that permeated the air made her feel extremely uncomfortable. If she stayed here for a long time, her body wouldn't be able to withstand it. Where is the ghost artifact? She raised her head. In front of her was an endless wasteland. A cool breeze blew on her cheeks. Her sweat dripped onto the ground and instantly evaporated. She realized that if she wanted to find the ghost artifact and bring it back to the primitive race, the difficulty wouldn't be ordinary. Chapter 3799. The Cliff of Death. Darkness shrouded the land, and the place became silent. The air was filled with a gloomy and terrifying aura, and one could vaguely hear the howling of ghosts. If an ordinary five-element Saint Realm expert came here, he would definitely be infiltrated by the terrifying aura in the void, and eventually his primordial spirit would shatter. This was also why no one dared to step into the Cliff of Death. However, Fang Chen was not an ordinary Saint Realm expert. Although his cultivation had fallen and he had just stepped into the five-element Saint Realm, the four origins he had comprehended were still in his body. They could help him resist the terrifying aura in the void and allow him to survive. Whoosh. Looking back, Fang Chen's cultivation experience was not smooth, but in the end, he relied on his talent and hard work to reach the 9th level Saint Realm, and his combat strength was comparable to an invincible saint. In the chaotic realm, he was almost invincible. However, the stronger one was, the greater the responsibility. When the Supreme Sovereign found him, he shouldered the burden of saving the people in the chaotic realm without hesitation. With the Supreme Sovereign's help, he reincarnated, and his cultivation fell, and he had to cultivate again. This time, it was the second time his cultivation had fallen, but it was different this time. The void was unstable when he was teleported in the black hole, and he was severely injured by the Ghost Manor Lord's all-out attack, causing his internal organs to be left with irrecoverable injuries. These injuries were comparable to the Great Tao injuries. Now, Fang Chen's only way was to comprehend the fifth origin, and then heal his internal injuries and recover his cultivation. Only in this way could he hope to survive the Cliff of Death. Buzz. The perfect bloodline in his body had completely fallen silent, and the drop of blood left by Supreme Sovereign Fu Jian had also dissipated. There was only a thin trace of power that he could barely absorb. Now, Fang Chen's situation was not optimistic. Poochie. Suddenly, he vomited blood and fell to the ground with a pale face. Why is this happening? A complicated look appeared in Fang Chen's eyes. He had formed an origin vortex with the four origins, and absorbed the endless power of all the towering trees in the dense forest, trying to refine the thick wood attribute power and analyze the structure of the wood origin, and then comprehend it in one fell swoop. However, during this period of time, he had been feeling uneasy. Earlier, when he was trying to comprehend the wood attribute power, his blood and chi had attacked his heart. The wood attribute power that he had refined in his body had exploded and spread throughout his entire body, directly crippling all of his previous efforts. Furthermore, he had also suffered serious injuries. Crack. He lowered his head and looked inside himself. The wounds on his internal organs had actually expanded a little, which made him feel even more uncomfortable. Whoosh! He took a deep breath and gradually adjusted his aura. He slowly sat up and pondered seriously, could it be that my cultivation method is wrong? He was very puzzled. He had used the most conservative method to comprehend the origin of wood. According to his speculations, even if he couldn't comprehend it, he would at least be able to protect himself. However, the current situation left him at his wits' end. The wounds on my internal organs are expanding. This means that the process of comprehending the wood essence has greatly damaged my internal organs, causing the four essences to reject and clash with each other, causing the wounds on my internal organs to continue to expand. Fang Chen said in a deep voice, if this continues, my internal organs will completely shatter. Although the shattering of his internal organs wouldn't kill him, for a martial arts expert like Fang Chen, it was tantamount to cutting off his cultivation path. He would have no hope of breaking through to the primal chaos supremacy realm in this lifetime. This was something that Fang Chen could not accept. Therefore, he stopped comprehending the wood essence and calmed his heart. He seriously reviewed the process to see what had gone wrong. At the same time, the Blood-Red Lion clan thousands of miles away saw this scene and sneered. What a foolish fellow. How dare he comprehend the wood essence in this area? A clan member said disdainfully. He has already suffered a backlash. If he continues, he will definitely die, another clan member said. They clearly saw Fang Chen's situation. The reason why they didn't act rashly was because they were waiting for the best opportunity. The Blood-Red Lion clan leader's gaze was deep as he stared at Fang Chen. This fellow has good potential. He has four essences and only lacks the wood essence to reach perfection. Unfortunately, he chose the wrong place. Buzz. Just as he was about to speak again, his body suddenly trembled uncontrollably. His heart was filled with fear. He didn't need to turn around to know who had come. The temperature in the void dropped rapidly as if it was about to freeze the world. Murderous intent filled the void. Not good. The Blood-Red Lion clan members exclaimed and retreated. The Blood-Red Lion clan leader trembled as he turned his head to look at the person who had come. A noble woman with a proud figure and a cold aura appeared out of thin air. She looked ahead as if she didn't care about the Blood-Red Lion clan at all. But just by standing there, she gave the Blood-Red Lion clan endless pressure. Leng Xian. The Blood-Red Lion clan leader forcibly suppressed the fear in his heart and spoke. We didn't do anything wrong. Leng Xian, what brings you here? This was their clan's territory. They didn't do anything wrong, but Leng Xian had come. No one knew better than them just how terrifying this extremely cold and otherworldly fairy was. Thinking back to the past. The Blood-Red Lion clan had surrounded Leng Xian, but when she was angry, millions of corpses fell. That bloody scene was still vivid in their minds. Therefore, the Blood-Red Lion clan leader wouldn't dare to be disrespectful to Leng Xian. Scram. Leng Xian's red lips parted slightly as she spat out a word. Immediately, the Blood-Red Lion clan leader led his clan members and hurriedly left. Buzz. Leng Xian walked lightly towards Fang Chen. With every step she took, the ground would freeze. The ice continued to cover the ground with her feet until it reached Fang Chen's feet. After Leng Xian's arrival, the void was completely frozen. Even the wood element aura in the towering tree was frozen. It was the first time Fang Chen had seen the origin source being frozen. He raised his head abruptly and saw a pitilessly beautiful face. He was completely stunned. There was actually such a beautiful face in this world. Under the noble and cold aura was a stunning face. Leng Xian was wearing a white dress. Her perfect body made one's imagination run wild. Fang Chen met her eyes and was stunned on the spot. Who are you? After a long while, Fang Chen was shivering from the cold. He came to his senses and hurriedly asked. He stared at Leng Xian vigilantly. His intuition told him that the woman in front of him was extremely powerful. You're finally here. Leng Xian said something that didn't make sense. Fang Chen was a little stunned. You know me. Leng Xian didn't speak. Her beautiful eyes flickered with a strange light as she stared at Fang Chen. Chapter 3800. You're finally here. Evidently, those words meant that Lung Xian knew Fang Chen. However, the latter did not know her. In fact, he had never even heard of such a woman. So, there was only one possibility. She felt a familiar aura on him. Whose aura was it? Was it Supreme Fu Jian's, the Nether King's, or someone else's? For a moment, Fang Chen's mind was in a mess. He didn't know what this woman's attitude was towards him. If she was an enemy, he wouldn't be able to escape. Buzz. A strange light shot out from Lung Xian's eyes and condensed into a line in the void. It instantly shot out and drilled into Fang Chen's mind. The latter did not even have time to react before he was hit by the line. Dong. Fang Chen felt the power in his body shake, and his internal injuries seemed to be expanding. As the line invaded, his primordial spirit trembled, and he felt a great sense of danger. What are you doing? Fang Chen roared, desperately trying to stop the line, but it was useless. After his cultivation level fell, he couldn't fight back against the woman in white. Crack. His internal injuries expanded again, and in the blink of an eye, a thick scar appeared. At this time, Fang Chen's internal organs could be seen clearly. Fang Chen saw traces of black blood flowing out of his internal injuries. This was something he hadn't noticed before. What was this black blood? Why was it hiding in his internal organs? Hiss. As soon as the black blood appeared, it was burned and refined by the power in the line. After a while, the black blood was completely burned away. At this time, Fang Chen's internal injuries shrank rapidly until there was only a small gap left. Buzz. The power in the line was almost exhausted. When Fang Chen sensed that the woman in white didn't have any evil intentions towards him, he heaved a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, the remaining aura of Supreme Fu Jian's blood suddenly spread throughout Fang Chen's body, forcibly refining the line. Buzz. The last wisp of aura from the drop of blood Supreme Patriarch Fu Jian had left behind disappeared into Fang Chen's internal injuries. At the same time, the line that had entered Fang Chen's body also disappeared. You're leaving after all? The white-clothed lady's voice sounded once again. However, Fang Chen was able to discover that her voice contained an aura of sorrow. Logically speaking, a powerhouse like the woman in white should be able to completely control her emotions. It was very rare for her to be in such a state of near collapse. But right now, the woman in white could not help but shed a tear. Looking at the teardrops on her flawless face, Fang Chen seemed to understand a little. The woman in white and Supreme Fu Jian must be closely related. Otherwise, she wouldn't have shed tears after sensing the aura of Supreme Fu Jian's blood. Why did you do this? The woman in white shook her head and cried. Her hair covered her face, and her cold aura froze the void. Even Fang Chen couldn't move. She was crying, and she was asking Supreme Fu Jian why he did this. Fang Chen's heart trembled. What had happened back then? Judging from the white-robed woman's expression, she might have liked Fu Jian, but he had abandoned her for the primal chaos world. Of course, this was only Fang Chen's guess. Only the person involved knew the truth. Phew. Fang Chen let out a sigh of relief. If the woman in white was really related to Supreme Fu Jian, she wouldn't attack him. However, he was afraid that she would vent her anger on him because of her grief. With his current strength, let alone this woman in white, even an ordinary Saint King Realm Master would be able to kill him with a single slap. Fang Chen didn't dare to say anything. He quietly waited for the woman in white to vent her anger. After a long while, the crying stopped, and the frozen void was gradually unsealed. The terrifying cold qi shrunk through the ground and returned to the woman in white's body. At this moment, the woman in white stretched out her hand and pushed her hair aside. The tears on her face had disappeared, and she looked cold again. She stared at Fang Chen with her deep eyes. Are you his successor? The woman in white asked. Fang Chen nodded. He didn't want to anger the woman in white. Do you know who I am? The woman in white continued asking. Fang Chen shook his head, indicating that he did not know. The woman in white then said, Lung Xian. Her name was Lung Xian, which meant cold and arrogant. Fang Chen didn't understand. Why did she emphasize her name? However, what Lung Xian said next moved Fang Chen. He also learned some of Supreme Fu Jian's secrets. Back then, he saved me from the world of ice and snow. From then on, I took Lung as my surname. Lung Xian murmured to herself. She seemed to be lost in her memories. Her face was cold. And he taught me cultivation as an immortal. One day, I found myself deeply in love with him. But he pointed to the front and told me that he was going to the end of the world to save the people of the Chaos Realm. Lung Xian's body trembled. She looked at Fang Chen and said, I didn't understand at that time. One day, when I cultivated to a certain level, I realized that the end of the world he was talking about was the origin world. From then on, I cultivated like crazy. I didn't hesitate to reincarnate and finally came to the origin world. Unfortunately, he's long gone. Fang Chen's heart trembled. He didn't expect the woman in white to be Supreme Fu Jian's admirer. Moreover, she was also a creature of the Chaos Realm. However, he found it a little unbelievable. Could he reincarnate to the origin world with his own strength? He clearly remembered that the Supreme Sovereign had once said that the Heavenly Tao forbade reincarnating to the origin world. In other words, the Heavenly Tao would stop him when he reincarnated. Once the Heavenly Tao stopped him, his soul would scatter. However, Fang Chen did not dare to ask. He only secretly guessed that if the woman in white had really relied on her own strength to forcefully reincarnate into the origin world, then her strength in her previous life would have definitely reached a level where she could look down on all mountains. Fang Chen felt very pressured in the face of such a powerhouse. Senior. Fang Chen said, as you can see, I am a creature of the Chaos Realm. I reincarnated to the origin world to save the people of the Chaos Realm and complete the mission that Supreme Fu Jian failed to complete. Lung Xian nodded. Your talent is good, but your internal injuries will interrupt your cultivation path. Moreover, comprehending the origin of wood here is your biggest mistake. Oh! Fang Chen was surprised. A super powerhouse of the wood attribute once died here. Before he died, he was so angry that he cursed this forest with his life's wood attribute power. Any cultivator who tries to comprehend the origin of wood here will ultimately explode and die because of the power of the curse, Lung Xian said slowly. Fang Chen turned pale with fright. He recalled the scene of him coughing up blood and was horrified. Chapter 3801. Fang Chen was shocked and even a little dazed. He thought that the forest was filled with endless wood elemental aura and it was the best place to comprehend the origin of wood. However, he did not expect that it would almost become his burial ground. He looked at the depths of the forest with fear and his face was extremely solemn. He could not imagine what kind of terrifying scene would happen if he continued to comprehend it. Fortunately, Lung Xian appeared and prevented the tragedy from happening. Phew. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He looked at Lung Xian gratefully. Thank you for saving my life, senior. If it were not for Lung Xian, he might have really exploded and died. He could not die. He still had unfinished tasks. The living beings of the chaotic realm were still waiting for his triumphant return. Lung Xian shook her head and was about to speak when her expression suddenly changed. She swung her sleeve and an extremely cold energy appeared out of thin air and rushed towards the void in the distance. Crack! The void shattered and the towering tree was annihilated. A crack in the void gradually spread and a terrifying voice came from it. Lung Xian, how long are you going to hide? As soon as the voice fell, a figure in a black robe completely shrouded in black mist walked out of the crack in the void. His aura locked onto Lung Xian and he smiled coldly. Fang Chen could clearly feel the change in Lung Xian's aura and her expression. There was a trace of panic in her eyes. What did this mean? It meant that the person Lung Xian was facing was very powerful. From which Lung Xian snorted and her figure flickered and appeared in front of the black figure. She made the first move and fought fiercely with the black figure. Boom! Boom! Terrifying aura fluctuations spread out continuously. Fang Chen could not help but take a few steps back, afraid of being affected. It seems that these two should be rivals. Fang Chen analyzed. Judging from Lung Xian's aura, she should be an ultimate saint. Judging from the expression in her eyes, the black figure should be stronger. From the conversation between the two, He could vaguely guess that the black figure had been chasing Lung Xian all these years and the latter had been hiding. Could it be that the aura on my body attracted Lung Xian? Fang Chen felt rather guilty. At the end of the day, Lung Xian was still a member of the Chaos Realm. She had even gone as far as to reincarnate and come to the origin world for the person she loved. Moreover, she was inextricably linked to Supreme Fu Jian. But now, because of him, she was in danger. This made Fang Chen feel somewhat ashamed. Boom! Boom! The shockwaves from the battle were huge. Very quickly, the black shadow gained the upper hand. Lung Xian was completely suppressed by the black shadow. Rip! The black shadow stretched out its hand, wanting to suppress Lung Xian. However, the latter dodged in time. Her white dress was torn apart, revealing her snow-white skin. Lung Xian was enraged. An extremely cold aura spread out, instantly covering her body with a layer of frost. Let's go. Lung Xian sent a voice transmission to Fang Chen. Senior, how can I help you? Fang Chen shook his head. His strength was too weak now. Even if he managed to escape, he would surely die if he bumped into someone else. Therefore, it was better for him to cooperate with Lung Xian and see if they could kill the Black Shadow. Lung Xian hesitated. Fang Chen hurriedly said, although the Black Shadow is strong, I can feel that his strength is not stable. I have a way to suppress his bloodline power temporarily. Lung Xian was shocked to hear this. However, she quickly reacted and said, I need 10 seconds. Fang Chen thought for a moment and nodded heavily. If he fully released the vermilion bird bloodline, he should be able to hold on for a few seconds. However, he did not know if he could hold on for 10 seconds. Boom! Fang Chen gritted his teeth and activated the power within his body. The vermilion bird bloodline that possessed an unparalleled godly might was unleashed. The terrifying power of the bloodline instantly filled the void and caged the black figure within it. What? The Black Shadow felt his heart palpitating. He exclaimed and struggled with all his might. Lung Xian was also stunned. However, golden light shot out from her eyes. She looked at Fang Chen meaningfully. Obviously, she had underestimated him. The successor of Supreme Fu Jian had quite a few tricks up his sleeve. He actually had the vermilion bird bloodline. Divine beast bloodline. Lung Xian shouted. While the Black Shadow was being suppressed by the vermilion bird bloodline, she used a super powerful secret technique to freeze the entire void. At the same time, she also used her trump card. Crack! Fang Chen felt that his body was about to explode. The vermilion bird bloodline contained the vermilion bird's divine might. It temporarily suppressed the Black Shadow, but the latter's strong counterattack gave Fang Chen a lot of pressure. The sound of bones breaking could be heard from Fang Chen's body. He gritted his teeth and held on. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. By the time Lung Xian finished freezing him, 5 seconds had already passed. Fang Chen felt that his body had reached its limit. If he continued, it was very likely that his body would explode and he would die. Hold on. He was almost unconscious, but he still held on. Break. The Black Shadow roared crazily as it retaliated with all its might. Lung Xian also executed a series of techniques. She glanced at Fang Chen as a look of worry surfaced on her face that was as calm as an ancient well. Her hands moved faster, forming seals with both hands. The ice sculpture in the void gradually took shape. 6 seconds, 7 seconds, 8 seconds. When the time reached 8 seconds, Fang Chen's skin was covered with wounds. The wounds on his internal organs were also expanding. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices. It was very frightening. At this time, he was almost unconscious. He had reached his limit, and his primordial spirit was also shaking. Seeing this scene, the Black Shadow sneered and launched a final attack. With a boom, the seal of the vermilion bird bloodline was shattered. The terrifying power instantly drowned Fang Chen. However, at the critical moment, a white hand pulled Fang Chen away. At the same time, the ice sculpture in the void released a supreme aura that drowned the Black Shadow. No, the smile on the Black Shadow's face stopped abruptly. After seeing the ice sculpture, it was replaced by fear. He screamed miserably, but it was useless. The ice sculpture had already taken shape. There was no turning back. Crack. With the shattering of the ice sculpture, the black shadow was also completely annihilated. The terrifying power spread in all directions, destroying the entire forest. In a canyon not far from the forest, Lungxian's body fell to the ground with a bang. She fell unconscious, and Fang Chen also fell unconscious on top of her. Feeling such a huge commotion, the Blood Lion clan's clansmen were frightened. Too strong. Many of the clansmen sighed. The Blood Lion clan's leader was even more shocked. Such a big commotion. Are those two fighting? It was glad that it didn't touch the stupid cultivator in the forest. Otherwise, it would have attracted Lungxian's anger. If Lungxian was angry, millions of corpses would fall. Perhaps its clan would be destroyed because of this. Chapter 3802. Romance Chinese Network Death Cliff, Strange Canyon. This canyon was very special and strange. There was no one within 100 miles, not even a demonic beast. It was terrifyingly quiet, and there was an extremely oppressive feeling. Buzz. If an expert came here, he would find that there were layers of invisible halos at the entrance of the canyon, which completely sealed off the area. According to the power of the halos, even an invincible saint would not be able to break through it. The canyon was shrouded in death qi, and there was no sign of life at all. Two figures were lying on the ground, unconscious. They were Lungxian and Fang Chen. Lungxian and the black figure fought fiercely, causing a great commotion. In the end, Lungxian defeated the black figure with the help of Fang Chen's vermilion bird bloodline, and escaped to this place. However, because of this, Lungxian was heavily injured and fell into a coma. As for Fang Chen, his vermilion bird bloodline was exhausted and could not support him. Splash! The creek flowed, and the death qi spread in the silent canyon. One could even see the movement of the death qi in the creek. Normally, such a strong death qi would corrode the body of a five-elements sacred realm expert. However, there was a faint halo around Lungxian, and the death qi could not get close. As for Fang Chen, he was also protected by the faint halo around Lungxian's body. After an unknown amount of time, Fang Chen woke up. Pain spread throughout his body. His fingers twitched, and he slowly opened his eyes. Then, he let out a miserable cry. He had a splitting headache, and there was a crack on his primordial spirit. The energy in his body was exhausted, and he could not even lift his hand. Where am I? Fang Chen recalled what happened before he fell into a coma. At that time, Lungxian and the black figure were fighting fiercely. He activated his vermilion bird bloodline to help Lungxian, and then fell into a coma. He could not remember anything. Where is Lungxian? Fang Chen wanted to turn his head, but he found that he could not move his body. Feeling the strong death qi, he was alert. However, if he was really in a dangerous place, he would have died long ago. It should be safe here for the time being. Whoosh! Thinking of this, Fang Chen let out a sigh of relief and slowly adjusted his body. The perfect bloodline seeped into his body bit by bit, helping him recover his strength. At this moment, a bell-like voice rang in his ears. Needless to say, it was Lungxian's voice. Unfortunately, Fang Chen could not turn his head and could not see Lungxian's face. Are you okay? Lungxian asked. A strange expression surfaced on her cold and arrogant face. If it wasn't for Fang Chen, she might have really died in that forest. At this moment, Lungxian looked at Fang Chen with a grave expression. I'm fine. Where is this? Fang Chen asked. This is my territory. There's a powerful seal around it that no one can break. It's absolutely safe. Lungxian said. You used your bloodline power and used up all your energy. You need to rest. After speaking, Lungxian fell into silence. She sat down cross-legged and began to heal her wounds. Not long after, her complexion became a little rosy. Her injuries were basically fine. She looked at Fang Chen again and muttered to herself for a moment before saying, "Thank you. I should be the one thanking you." Fang Chen grinned. If it wasn't for Lungxian, he might have exploded and died from comprehending the origin of wood. Lungxian's appearance prevented him from making a big mistake. Lungxian shook her head. She did not want to dwell on this topic. She changed the topic. If I'm not wrong, your previous realm had reached the level of a ninth order saint, but it fell because of a serious injury. That's right. Fang Chen told Leng Xian about what had happened in the Ghost Manor's territory. After listening, the latter nodded calmly. Fang Chen vaguely felt that Leng Xian seemed to know the background of the Ghost Manor Lord. It's best not to go to the Ghost Manor territory in the future. That area is very demonic. Leng Xian said. It's very difficult for you to compete for the ghost artifact unless you can step into the level of a pinnacle saint. In the Cliff of Death, many clans were eyeing the ghost artifact. As long as there was any movement of the ghost artifact, it could not be hidden from them. And a human martial artist whose realm had fallen to the level of a saint king, how could he compete with those ancient clans? Senior, what's the relationship between the primitive clans and Supreme Fu Jian? Fang Chen asked. This was what he wanted to know the most. The world-shocking Great Demon had asked him to come to the Cliff of Death to find the ghost artifact and then bring it back to the dragon-slaying cave. Sky Dragon Supreme had asked him to help Princess Huang bring the ghost artifact back to the primitive clans. He was very clear that the ghost artifact must be very involved, and it might affect the fate of the Chaos Realm. However, what puzzled him the most was the role of the primitive clans in the entire matter. Why did Sky Dragon Supreme ask Princess Huang to bring the ghost artifact back to the life-forbidden zone? Leng Xian was silent. Her beautiful face flickered with a cold aura. She raised her head and looked at the void. Her eyes were abnormally solemn. She seemed to have recalled some painful memories. Feeling the oppressive aura in the void, Fang Chen did not dare to ask Leng Xian anymore. He was afraid that the latter would kill him in anger. Just like this, the canyon became silent again. Half a month later, Fang Chen's strength was finally almost recovered. With the penetration of the perfect bloodline, his injuries were basically healed. His face was glowing. He stood up from the ground and turned his head to look behind him. A peerless face was imprinted in his eyes. Fang Chen was instantly stunned. Buzz. At this moment, he felt an extremely cold aura enter his mind. In the next moment, his body trembled. He quickly retracted his gaze and took a few steps back. He was so frightened that he was trembling. Senior. Fang Chen shouted. This junior has no intention to offend you. Buzz. Leng Xian retracted her aura and looked coldly at Fang Chen. The latter instantly felt the pressure on his body decrease. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. From today onwards, you will stay in this canyon. I will personally refine your primordial spirit. Leng Xian suddenly said. Refine my primordial spirit? Fang Chen was stunned. His primordial spirit had already reached the nascent soul realm. It was basically at the peak. How could he refine it? But in the next moment, he understood. Ah! A miserable scream came out of Fang Chen's mouth. He hugged his head with both hands. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. At this moment, Leng Xian's body was constantly releasing an extremely cold aura. The void was almost frozen. Fang Chen's body was covered in silver frost. If you want to save the chaotic world, you must transcend. If your primordial spirit can't condense, how can you transcend? Leng Xian's voice echoed in the canyon. Obviously, Leng Xian was also helping Fang Chen. The latter was shouldering a heavy responsibility. The fate of the chaotic world was in his hands. For a moment, she seemed to see the young Supreme Fu Jian. A trace of tenderness flashed in the depths of her eyes. Chapter 3803. Just as Leng Xian had said, with Fang Chen's current cultivation realm, he would definitely die if he ventured into the Cliff of Death. This was the Cliff of Death, the place where an apocalyptic war had taken place. The deathly aura shrouded the land, and if a five-elements Saint Realm warrior entered and was attacked by the deathly aura, they would definitely die. Even an invincible saint would not dare to venture into the Cliff of Death. Only an ultimate saint would have the ability to protect himself. Although this was the forbidden death zone, it was also known as the place with the highest possibility of obtaining the inheritance of a paragon. Therefore, despite the dangers, there were still people who were not afraid of death who ventured in. Of course, such people were few and far between. The Origin World was the headquarters of the Devouring Demon Clan, and it was personally created by the clan leader. Logically speaking, they should be united, but the devouring demon clan was too large, and there were many branches within the clan. Ever since the clan leader went into seclusion, the devouring demon clan had gradually spawned countless branches, and the devouring demon bloodline in these branches had become thinner and thinner. Rather than calling them the devouring demon clan, it was more appropriate to call them other clans. In the Cliff of Death, there were many clans that originated from the devouring demon clan, but they had turned against the devouring demon clan. Their goal was to kill all members of the devouring demon clan who ventured into the Cliff of Death. The patriarch of the monster beast clan and lunatic swordsman moved quickly. With the map given by the Ghost Emperor, they were able to avoid some dangerous places and move quickly. However, just as they were secretly excited, danger finally arrived. Roar. The roar of a beast resounded through the sky. By the time the two of them reacted, they were already surrounded by a special monster beast clan. These special monster beasts roared angrily at them, and the leader of the special monster beasts even opened its mouth wide, as if to devour the two of them. Damn you, devouring demon clan! The special monster beast clan exuded a strange aura, surrounding the two of them in the middle. Their anger soared to the sky. Let's go! The patriarch of the monster beast clan growled, and immediately fled with lunatic swordsman. However, just as they moved, they felt a huge force coming at them, and they hurriedly circulated the energy in their bodies to block it. Boom! A huge palm sent the two of them flying. Kill them, the leader of the special monster beast clan said. In an instant, a tide of demonic beasts began to surround and annihilate the two of them. This was especially true for Sword Lunatic, who came from one of the 4 major branches. Furthermore, he was the most outstanding sword Dao genius in that branch. The demon-devouring bloodline in his body was extremely thick. At that moment, the attacks that he was receiving were especially fierce. Sword cleaving heaven and earth. Sword Lunatic's eyes were bloodshot as he waved both of his hands continuously. Streaks of dazzling sword radiance whizzed through the void and pierced the body of the special demonic beast. Ah! Miserable shrieks came out from the mouths of the special beasts as their clansmen fell into pools of blood one after another. Courting death. Seeing this, the leader of the special tribes growled and slammed his palm forward. Lunatic swordsman could feel a terrifying force coming towards him. Without hesitation, he unleashed the drunken sword inheritance. Wang. His body swayed left and right as if he was drunk. However, the sword in his hand emitted sword light that was more than 10 times stronger than before. Roar. On the other side, the patriarch of the monster race had transformed into his true form and was engaged in a battle with the special tribe. Don't fight. The voice of the patriarch of the monster race entered the ears of Lunatic Swordsman, who was on the verge of going berserk. The latter was stunned for a moment before he slashed out with his sword. Boundless sword radiance descended from the sky, shattering the void wherever it passed. The special demonic beasts were terrified and kept dodging. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lunatic Swordsman slashed out with his sword once more, resolving the crisis of the patriarch of the monster race. The two of them looked at each other and increased their speed to the maximum to escape. Damn it, you guys can't escape. The special tribe's monster race roared in anger and chased after them. They're too fast. Lunatic Swordsman said as he felt the power coming from behind him. In the Cliff of Death, they can absorb death chi to increase their strength. We're at a disadvantage right from the start. We can't fight them. The patriarch of the monster race said. Then what should we do? Once they were caught, they would definitely die. Roar, 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 roar. The special tribe's monster race was about to catch up with them. Suddenly, the two of them felt chills down their spines, as if they had entered an extremely dangerous area. What's going on? Lunatic Swordsman shuddered. He stopped in mid-air and looked around vigilantly. Not good. The patriarch of the monster race exclaimed. He wanted to change his direction, but he was shocked to find that he couldn't move his body and was imprisoned in mid-air. Just as they were feeling extremely anxious, an awe-inspiring voice rang out in their minds. I can save you guys, but you have to sacrifice half of your primordial spirit to me. This voice was extremely cold and contained an extremely dangerous aura. Otherwise, Only death awaits you. Lunatic swordsman and the patriarch of the monster race looked at each other. Their bodies were imprisoned. Once the special tribe's monster race got close, they would definitely die. Sacrificing half of their primordial spirit might cause their strength to plummet, but at least they could preserve their lives. Ghost Emperor's mission is more important. Lunatic swordsman said after hesitating for a moment. If they died, the mission given by the Ghost Emperor would be considered a failure. All right, we promise you. Hurry up and do it. The patriarch of the monster race felt bitter in his heart, but he had no other choice. Sure enough. After they agreed, a demonic laughter came from the void. Then, they saw the earth trembling and dust flying. At a speed visible to the naked eye, it condensed into a big yellow hand in front of the two. Boom! The sound of an explosion shook the sky. The special tribe's monster race that was chasing them all stopped in their tracks. The leader stared at the big yellow hand and cupped his fists to the void. This is a personal grudge between my race and those two guys. You want to interfere too? A sinister and terrifying voice came from the void. The two of them have already agreed to sacrifice half of their primordial spirit to this seat. So, you guys can retreat. This seat will protect the two of them. You. The leader of the special tribe was furious, but in the end, he endured it. Just wait and see. With that, the special tribe's monster race retreated. Seeing this, the patriarch of the monster race and lunatic swordsman breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, they muttered in their hearts. Who is this person? Why is he so powerful that even the special tribe doesn't dare to make a move in front of him? Hee, a sinister and terrifying laughter came into the ears of the two. The two of you, are you ready to sacrifice your primordial spirit? Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the sky, a death chi vortex appeared. Death chi from all directions swarmed in. Chapter 3804. Primordial Spirit Sacrifice. This was a fatal blow to a 5 elements sacred realm martial artist. After hearing the eerie voice in the void, the faces of the ancestor and sword lunatic changed. They had just managed to scare the special tribe away, and now this person wanted them to sacrifice their primordial spirits. Let's go. Without any hesitation, the two figures flashed and quickly fled. Want to leave? An eerie voice rang out from the void once again. Following that, a terrifying energy swept out from the heavens and earth, forming an invisible barrier that trapped the two of them within. You have angered me. In the next moment, the ancestor and sword lunatic disappeared into the invisible barrier. The death cliff was very big, and the canyon that Fang Chen was in was just a very small area. The battle between the ancestor of the monster beast clan and sword lunatic did not spread to this place. The canyon was silent, and a cold aura filled the air. Suddenly, a miserable cry broke the silence of the canyon, followed by a series of roars from the canyon. It was Fang Chen's voice. His body went limp, and he fell to the ground, holding his head with both hands. His mind was shaking, and his primordial spirit was in pain. Beside him, the white-clothed Lung Xian sat upright, exuding an extremely cold aura. Her fair hands slowly spread out, and there was a terrifying aura surging in her palms. Finally, under her control, the aura condensed into a beam of light, which quickly drilled into Fang Chen's mind. Lung Xian was helping Fang Chen condense his primordial spirit. As she said, if the primordial spirit could not condense, there was no hope for him to step into the sovereign realm. Now, Fang Chen was shouldering the hope of the entire chaos realm. He had to at least step into the chaotic sovereign realm to have a chance to save the chaos realm. Looking at Fang Chen's pained expression, Lung Xian was in a trance for a moment. Her palms shook, and a ripple appeared in her heart. In just a breath's time, Fang Chen suddenly felt the pain disappear. He was relieved, and his forehead was full of sweat. Just as he was about to speak, Lung Xian returned to normal. A determined look flashed in her eyes, and the power in her palms drilled into Fang Chen's mind. Ah! Another miserable shriek rang out as Fang Chen's body rolled about on the ground. Lung Xian thought of Autarch Fujian. Fang Chen had so much of the former's shadow that Lung Xian was a bit distracted. However, after the distraction, Lung Xian was able to focus even more. She knew that Paragon Fujian had perished in order to save the primal chaos world. Now that Fang Chen was tasked with the task, he would have to endure pain that no ordinary person would be able to bear. Hold on. Lung Xian mumbled to herself. After an unknown amount of time, the canyon finally quieted down completely. Lung Xian wiped the sweat off her forehead with her fair palm. She stood up and glanced at Fang Chen. She heaved a sigh of relief with a hint of fatigue on her face. Refining Fang Chen's primordial spirit for many days had consumed a lot of her energy. Now that she had passed the first stage, she could rest for a while. At that moment, Fang Chen was lying on the ground, unconscious. However, his breathing was very even. There was a huge crack in the primordial spirit in his mind. Within that crack, there was a strange power spreading out. This power seemed to want to improve his current primordial spirit. The perfect bloodline in his body was also circulating automatically, spreading to every corner of his body, protecting his meridians and making sure that his bones were intact. Perfect bloodline? Lung Xian murmured. She had heard Autarch Fujian and the others talk about this plan, but she didn't expect it to succeed. What surprised Lung Xian the most was that Fang Chen not only had the perfect bloodline, but also the vermilion bird bloodline. Although it was thin, its power was strong. Maybe you can really succeed. Lung Xian's red lips parted slightly as she muttered to herself. She suddenly thought of a possibility. If Fang Chen really stepped into the Chaos Supreme Realm and became the legendary Chaos Controller with the backup plan left behind by Autarch Fujian and the others, he could suppress the devouring demons and resolve the crisis of the Chaos Realm. Could he revive Autarch Fujian? At this moment, a figure appeared in her mind. She looked lovingly at the figure that had captivated her soul. Sigh. After a long while, she sighed and shook her head. In the end, it was just a dream. Cultivation had become more and more difficult in the age of chaos, and with the imperfections of the heavenly Tao, almost no one could step into the Chaos Supreme Realm. She was delusional enough to think that Fang Chen could become the Chaos Controller. Haha. A self-deprecating smile appeared on her face. She shook her head hard and stopped thinking about it. No matter what, he is the only hope of the Chaos Realm. I will do everything I can to help him, said Lung Xian. In his coma, Fang Chen had a dream. He dreamed that he was in a vast galaxy with no end in sight. He had the origin sources of the 5 elements, and they had merged into one. He found the key to step into the Chaos Supreme Realm. In the end, he resisted the heavenly tribulation and successfully stepped into the Chaos Supreme Realm. He also led the living beings of the Chaos Realm to completely destroy the devouring demons. Kill! Fang Chen yelled. He clenched his fists so tightly that blue veins popped out. His body emitted a bloody aura. Calm down. When Lung Xian saw this, she gently tapped his forehead with her finger. Immediately, a cool aura spread throughout his body, calming him down. Whoosh! Fang Chen opened his eyes and opened his hand as if he was trying to grab something. However, he was caught off guard and grabbed Lung Xian's hand. Buzz! A cold aura spread. Lung Xian's face darkened. Fang Chen's body trembled. He was so scared that he immediately withdrew his hand. Senior. Fang Chen was a little weak. He quickly explained, I just had a dream when I was unconscious. What I did just now was unintentional. Please don't misunderstand. Lung Xian's expression changed, but she did not flare up in the end. How do you feel? Asked Lung Xian. Senior, I feel that my essence soul seems to have improved a lot. Some of the questions that have been troubling me previously have answers. Fang Chen said, most importantly, I seem to have experienced a Chaos Supreme Realm heavenly tribulation in my sleep. I can clearly sense all the power in the heavenly tribulation. At this point, Fang Chen mocked himself. Perhaps it was just a dream. In this era, no one has become a supremacy. How could I experience a heavenly tribulation in my sleep? Oh! Hearing this, Lung Xian's ice-cold face was filled with shock. What did you say? In his sleep, he experienced a Chaos Supreme Realm heavenly tribulation and could clearly sense the power in the heavenly tribulation. This scene was familiar. Lung Xian's heart was in turmoil. She quickly searched through the memories in her mind. Soon, Her expression froze. She thought of a legend. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 3805. She had once heard of a legend. It seemed to be passed down from a primitive tribe. It was said that this tribe lived in the forbidden zone of life. It was an extremely ancient tribe. They were born to be saints, but because of this, it was even more difficult for them to cultivate. Although they could quickly cultivate to the ultimate saint level, it was still very difficult for them to step into the supremacy realm and touch the threshold of the supremacy realm. However, after a long time of reproduction, there were many talented people in this tribe. Finally, in a certain era, there was a ruling genius. When he was stuck at the ultimate saint level for 30,000 years, he fell into a dream during an epiphany. In the dream, he saw himself touching the threshold of the supremacy realm. He also saw himself going through the baptism of the supremacy tribulation. When he woke up, he actually attracted the heavenly tribulation. The only pity was that he fell into a demonic barrier in the last heavenly tribulation and finally died. This was also the most regrettable thing for the primitive tribe. Lung Xian thought of this legend. At that time, the matter of the primitive tribes had attracted unprecedented attention. Even some old monsters that had been living in seclusion had come out of seclusion. After countless years of research, they had classified it as a supreme being projection. It seemed to be a dream, but in fact, it was a supremacy who had fallen. Across the river of time, the supremacy tribulation was projected into someone's dream, allowing him to quickly gain enlightenment and touch the threshold of the supremacy realm. The supremacy projection was something that could only be encountered by chance. In the age of chaos, the supremacy did not appear. Those ancient supremacies had long disappeared from people's sight. The supremacy projection gradually became a legend. At this moment, Lung Xian's white cheeks had a faint expression. Her beautiful eyes flickered as she looked at Fang Chen. "How do you feel?" Fang Chen shook his head. He was a little uncomfortable being stared at by such a beautiful woman. He lowered his head and checked his body. Other than his primordial spirit becoming more solid, there were no other changes. "Rest well for the next few days and recuperate," Lung Xian said. "If you have any questions, ask me directly." Lung Xian was sure that what Fang Chen experienced should be the legendary supremacy projection. He went through the baptism of the supremacy tribulation in his dream, and quickly gained enlightenment. Therefore, she did not dare to be careless. She carefully observed Fang Chen. Several days later, Lung Xian shook her head as disappointment surfaced on her face. It seemed that it wasn't the sovereign being's projection. "Come here." Fang Chen was stunned. Then, he walked to Lung Xian's side. The latter said, "Continue condensing your primordial spirit." Hearing this, Fang Chen smiled bitterly. He had only rested for a few days and now he had to refine his primordial spirit again. He had the urge to die. Sure, before he could finish, he felt his primordial spirit suffer a heavy blow. He hugged his head with both hands and screamed miserably. Obviously. These few days, Lung Xian had asked him to adjust his body, just in case. After confirming that it was not the projection of a paragon, Lung Xian could continue to refine her primordial spirit with ease. In the silent canyon, Fang Chen's screams could be heard. Fortunately, there was a seal blocking the sound. Otherwise, all the demonic beasts within 10,000 miles would have been alerted. In Princess Huang's palm, there was a golden token. This was given to her by her master. It could sense the approximate location of the ghost artifact. Ever since she entered the Cliff of Death, she had used this golden token to successfully avoid most of the dangers. Now that she was moving forward, the golden token suddenly emitted a dazzling light and a sound came out. Princess Huang was shocked. She lowered her head and looked at the golden token. The golden token indicated the northeast direction, which meant that the ghost artifact was in this direction. "Let's go." Without any hesitation, she quickly headed towards the northeast direction. Not long after, she sensed an eerie and terrifying energy spreading toward her. She cursed in her heart and wanted to escape, but it was already too late. She felt that her body could no longer move. No. She was very anxious. With her strength, It was not enough to survive in the cliff of death. Once she was captured by an ancient powerhouse, it would be difficult for her to escape. At this moment, she heard a miserable cry coming from beside her. She turned around and saw two figures fending off the dark forces' invasion. Hee. It is your honor to sacrifice your primordial spirit to me. A sinister and terrifying voice came from the void. Sword Lunatic and the old ancestor of the demonic beast race felt that their primordial spirits were about to shatter. They let out a furious roar and wanted to escape, but the dark power was too strong. However, when the two of them were unable to stop it and were about to give up, a golden light suddenly shot out from the side, instantly destroying the dark power in the void. Their primordial spirits instantly returned to their minds. The two of them turned their heads and saw the golden token in Princess Huang's hand. He is afraid of the token. The old ancestor of the demonic beast race roared. Sword Lunatic also signaled to Princess Huang, if you want to live, continue to activate the golden token. Princess Huang naturally sensed it as well. The token bestowed by her master was actually able to restrain evil spirits and demons. The dark power in the void was obviously a little afraid. This is, damn primitive race. You guys actually want to interfere with the matters of the cliff of death. In the darkness, an angry roar came. However, taking advantage of this opportunity, the old ancestor of the demonic beast race and Sword Lunatic instantly fled. However, when they left, they didn't forget to bring Princess Huang along. The dark power in the void was too strong. If it wasn't for the golden token, they would have died without a doubt. Obviously, the golden token could restrain it. Therefore, they had a countermeasure in their hearts. In order to escape, Princess Huang didn't think too much. While using the golden token to force the dark power to retreat, she also rapidly fled. Not long later, the three of them left the territory of the dark power. The dark fog retreated. They could vaguely hear the angry roar in the void. Damn it, you guys can't escape. In the darkness, the evil power roared. The primordial spirits that were originally determined to win actually escaped under his nose. His anger soared to the sky. Damn primitive race. You guys forced me again and again. Do you really think I am afraid of you? It roared, one day, my believers will sacrifice their primordial spirits for me to be reborn. At that time, I will definitely go to the life-forbidden zone once. Unfortunately, it couldn't leave the territory of darkness and could only watch as the three of them escaped. Sword Lunatic heaved a sigh of relief. That was close. The old ancestor of the demonic beast race stared at Princess Huang with an unfriendly expression. May I ask for Mrs. Name? They faintly heard the words primitive race from the mouth of the dark power. Therefore, they were especially vigilant against Princess Huang. Chapter 3806. Romance Chinese Network. The old ancestor of the demonic beasts stared at Princess Huang. Beside him, Sword Lunatic seemed to have understood something. A layer of sword intent appeared around him as he took a step forward, getting closer to Princess Huang. Princess Huang also noticed the subtle movements of the two. She became vigilant and said directly, I accidentally entered a dangerous place and escaped with great difficulty. I won't stay here any longer. Farewell. After speaking, Princess Huang wanted to leave. But Sword Lunatic took a step forward and blocked her path. Want to leave? Sword Lunatic licked his dry lips and said in a gloomy voice, the primitive races of the life-forbidden zone and my devouring devil race are natural enemies. Do you think I will let you go? Just now, they heard very clearly that the method Princess Huang used was the method of the primitive races. Buzz. Seeing this, Princess Huang leaped up and floated in mid-air. She struck out with her palm at lightning speed. At the same time, her figure disappeared into the void. Swoosh. Sword Lunatic was already prepared. He slashed out with his sword. Terrifying sword chi wreaked havoc in the void. Not far away from him, fresh blood suddenly spurted out. Then, Princess Huang's delicate body fell to the ground. Her clothes were stained with blood. One of her arms was hanging down. She seemed to be injured. Mage, hand over the token and I can leave you with a complete corpse. The old ancestor of the demonic beasts said coldly. He unleashed a terrifying power, forming an absolute domain, trapping Princess Huang within. Despicable. Princess Huang looked at the two of them coldly. If it wasn't for the token in my hand, the two of you would have died in the hands of that evil existence. Now, you want to repay kindness with enmity? He, Sword Lunatic sneered. Trying to reason with them? What a joke. Right now, they only had one thought, and that was to help the Ghost Emperor find the ghost artifact. This was also a mission that they had to complete, as they had clearly witnessed the power of the token. If they could obtain it, they would be able to use it as a breakthrough point and continuously absorb the power of those ancient experts, thus increasing their own strength. This was a rare opportunity. The two of them naturally wouldn't let Princess Huang go. Hand over the token. Sword Lunatic held his long sword in his hand as sword chi surged around his body. He issued a final warning, "You are not a match for the two of us." Why struggle? Princess Phoenix's expression changed. She clenched her fists tightly and her heart burned with anger. However, her rationality told her that the strength of the two people in front of her had already reached the level of unrivaled saints. If the two of them joined forces, only pinnacle saints would be able to resist them. Even if she tried her best, it would be useless. Her divine sense quietly spread out, probing the surrounding environment. She wanted to see if she could use the geographical advantage to escape. Since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being impolite. The Sword Lunatic made his move, displaying the drunken sword inheritance. Terrifying sword chi swept across the horizon. His body swayed left and right, seemingly drunk, but in reality, he was channeling the drunken sword technique. At the same time, the old ancestor of the demonic beast race also quietly circulated his power to control this world, preventing Princess Phoenix from escaping. Rumble. A deafening sound resounded through the sky. Princess Huang and Sword Lunatic fought fiercely for a few breaths of time before she was completely defeated. Let's go. Suddenly, she saw a demonic beast loitering not far away. She wanted to alarm it and take advantage of the chaos to escape. What a pity. Sword Lunatic was already prepared for this. He slashed out with his sword and a 10,000 jong long sword light appeared in front of her, sending her flying. Poochie. Princess Huang's body was ruthlessly smashed onto the ground. Her throat moved and she spurted out a mouthful of blood. Her face was pale and her body was weak. She had lost her combat strength. Swoosh. The Sword Lunatic's sword pierced towards Princess Huang with lightning speed. When it was only an inch away from her body, the old ancestor of the demonic beast race stopped him. Stop. The old ancestor of the demonic beast race controlled the seal and forcefully stopped the Sword Lunatic. This made the latter puzzled. The old ancestor of the demonic beast race explained, "That token belongs to the primitive race. If we kill her, who will activate the token? Also, if she dies, the primitive race will definitely know. What if they kill her to the cliff of death?" Hearing this, the Sword Lunatic kept his sword and no longer spoke. The old ancestor of the demonic beast race narrowed his eyes and walked towards the controlled Princess Huang. "Tell me the method to control the token." "HMPH, dream on." Princess Huang snorted coldly. "I have plenty of time to wait for you." The old ancestor of the demonic beast race sneered. Cliff of Death, in the Silent Valley. After countless days and nights of tempering, the strength of Fang Chen's primordial spirit had reached an extremely high level. According to Lungxian, in the Age of Chaos, unless one was a half-step primal chaos sovereign, otherwise, even a pinnacle saint might not be stronger than his primordial spirit. Primordial spirit Tao condensation, this was the dream of all martial artists. Since ancient times, countless experts had been trapped on the path of primordial spirit Tao condensation for their entire lives. There were even more people who had fallen at this stage. At this moment, the tiny primordial spirit in Fang Chen's mind was emitting a terrifying aura. The current him, just the power of his soul was enough to kill some saint kings in the initial stage of the five-element saint realm. Voila! Suddenly, Fang Chen opened his eyes. He jumped up and looked around. When he realized that he was still in the valley, he heaved a sigh of relief. "What's wrong? Are you dreaming again?" Lungxian's voice came from behind. Fang Chen turned his head to look. Leng Xian, dressed in a white dress, looked so beautiful under the light. Even Fang Chen was a little dazed. However, when he felt a bone-chilling coldness, his body trembled. He hurriedly retracted his gaze and nodded. Why have I been having the same dream all this time? Ever since Leng Xian helped him temper his primordial spirit, he had been having the same dream. In his dream, he saw himself going through a tribulation. Every tribulation was different, but every time he could not see the final result, he would suddenly wake up. Leng Xian frowned. Fang Chen's situation was very rare. If it was in line with the legend, then he would not have dreamt so many times. Your situation is a little special. During this time, you must adjust your body to the best state at all times. After thinking for a moment, he could not understand. In the end, he simply stopped thinking about it. Leng Xian reminded him, your primordial spirit is still some distance away from Tao condensation. Perhaps you have been dreaming about going through a tribulation. This is a sign of your primordial spirit Tao condensation. In fact, Leng Xian did not believe it herself. Even in her era, very few people could condense their primordial spirit Tao condensation. Only experts who had stepped into the supremacy realm could condense their primordial spirit Tao condensation. No one below the supremacy realm could do it. Fang Chen's realm had fallen. Now, his cultivation was only at the initial stage of the Saint King realm. He was very far from the ultimate saint. Leng Xian did not believe that he could condense his primordial spirit Tao condensation. Of course, not believing it was one thing. Preparations were necessary. After all, there were all kinds of strange things in the boundless world. Chapter 3807. The primordial spirit manifestation realm was a realm that countless cultivators had dreamed of since ancient times. However, it was too difficult to condense one's primordial spirit into the Tao. Even those geniuses with extraordinary talent might not succeed. Ever since meeting Fang Chen, Leng Xian had a strong premonition. She felt that the man in front of her was very likely to make history and complete a feat that Supremacy Fujian and the others had failed to accomplish. Of course, it was too early to say that. Based on Fang Chen's performance, she needed to formulate a cultivation plan for Fang Chen and prepare the materials for the nascent spirit to condense the nascent spirit. Phew! Fang Chen took a deep breath as a strange look flickered in his pitch-black eyes. The tempering during this period had benefited him greatly. At this moment, his primordial spirit had already reached the limit of the nascent soul stage. He even felt that he only needed one more step to successfully manifest his Tao. The more he learned about the nascent spirit, the more powerless he felt. The nascent spirit. Gradually, the expression in Fang Chen's eyes turned serious. Unswerving determination appeared on his face. I will definitely succeed. He thought of his wife and daughter, as well as his family and friends, who were still waiting for his return in the Chaos Realm. For the sake of those he needed to protect, he would do whatever it took to refine his perfect bloodline to the extreme, then condense the Tao with his nascent spirit and step into the Chaos Realm to destroy the demon devourers in the origin world. Don't feel too pressured. Few can condense the Tao with their nascent spirit. You're still young. If you cultivate for enough time and accumulate enough experience, you should be able to succeed. Clearly, Leng Xian had high hopes for Fang Chen. Thank you. Fang Chen cupped his fists and looked up at Leng Xian's cold face. He nodded heavily. Although they were both from the Chaos Realm, Leng Xian had helped him because of Supremacy Fujian. He was very grateful. The cliff of death was full of danger. He'd been severely injured and his cultivation had dropped. It was difficult to move around here. If it wasn't for Leng Xian, he would have died long ago. Recuperate first. I'll take you to a training ground in 3 days. Leng Xian turned and left, leaving Fang Chen in a daze. 3 days later, Leng Xian brought Fang Chen to a shattered space. This shattered space is a mystic realm. There are powerful seals around it. It is also a trial ground for sages. Leng Xian briefly introduced the shattered space to Fang Chen. There were many defeated and trapped devouring demon clan members, as well as some other special races. There were even descendants of chaotic realm experts. In the end, Leng Xian's words greatly shocked Fang Chen. In this broken space, it is very likely that there are descendants of primitive races. According to Lung Xian's understanding, the primitive races were also one of the masterminds behind the tragic battle at the Death Cliff. What? Fang Chen was shocked. The primitive races in the Life Forbidden Zone were powerful races that could compete with the devouring devil race. They were born naturally, and their primitive bloodline was comparable to the perfect bloodline. It was one of the most powerful bloodlines in the world. He didn't expect that the descendants of the primitive tribes would also be in this broken space. The Death Cliff is too dangerous for you. If you want to quickly recover your cultivation base, this is the best place. Lung Xian pointed at the entrance and said, "Go in and train. I will guard you at the entrance and ensure that no one else can enter. Of course, you only have 3 months. Once the time is up, no matter where you are, you must leave quickly. Otherwise, it will cause a tremor in the broken space." After Lung Xian explained some things to take note of, she opened the entrance to the shattered space for Fang Chen. The latter bowed before her and stepped into it. Looking at Fang Chen's disappearing figure, Lung Xian's pale face was filled with worry. Can he succeed? The Death Cliff was huge. A battle in one place wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. However, recently, the Death Cliff was shrouded in a murderous aura. This caused the ancient experts who were sleeping in the dark to gradually awaken. Many people knew that the world was about to change. During this period, Princess Phoenix was captured by the ancestor of the demonic beasts and sword lunatic. She was forced to control the golden token and successfully avoided most of the dangers as she rushed towards the core of the Death Cliff. Moreover, during this period of time, the news about the ghost weapon had gradually spread. Many clans were secretly taking action. Undercurrents were surging and the atmosphere was stifling. However, Fang Chen didn't know about this. He entered the broken space and officially started a new round of training. This training was very important to him. Lung Xian had clearly planned out his cultivation path. This time, what he needed to do in the broken space was to constantly experience actual battles and then refine his body to stimulate the strength in his body and recover his cultivation base. Other than that, he also needed to use his powerful primordial spirit to explore the unknown and find some ancient fruits to prepare for the heavenly tribulation and the primordial spirit consolidation. The most important thing was to comprehend the wood origin. Although his cultivation base had fallen to the level of a sage king, the 4 origin that he had comprehended were still there. As long as he could comprehend the 5th origin, the 5 origin would be gathered in his body and his combat strength would soar. Whoosh! Standing in the barren desert, Fang Chen collected the thousands of thoughts in his mind and looked up. "The training begins," he said softly. Then, he stomped his foot and his body instantly shot out. Soon, he saw a ferocious demonic beast at the end of the desert. Boom! The battle was on the verge of breaking out. The ferocious demonic beast seemed to have gone through a battle and was covered in blood. Soon, Fang Chen had the absolute upper hand and suppressed the ferocious demonic beast. Roar! The ferocious demonic beast roared angrily, "Damn you, sneak attacking me while I'm seriously injured. I'm going to tear you apart." Seeing that the ferocious demonic beast was gathering people, Fang Chen didn't give him a chance. He released his powerful primordial spirit instantly and the terrifying power of the soul path condensed into a light shuttle. It struck the ferocious demonic beast's head as fast as lightning. Crack! The ferocious demonic beast didn't have any time to react and its head was directly smashed by the light shuttle. Its huge body fell heavily to the ground and died instantly. "Let's go." Fang Chen's figure flashed and disappeared. Not long after he left, countless demonic beasts appeared near the ferocious demonic beast's corpse. They looked up to the sky and roared as if they were looking for the perpetrator. "It's worthy of being a training ground." Fang Chen muttered to himself, "The demonic beasts here are very strong, but their combat skills are too clumsy. This is just right for me to make up for my shortcomings and train." After just one exchange, Fang Chen knew that this broken space was an excellent training ground for him. Chapter 3808. There was a powerful seal around the shattered space. A divine war had broken out here and countless experts had fallen, including the descendants of primitive tribes. Fang Chen had just entered and experienced a fierce battle. After the battle, he deeply understood the profoundness of this trial ground. Lung Xian had high hopes for him to fight with experts, break through in battle, and comprehend in battle. I will not disappoint you. Fang Chen clenched his fists and looked ahead. This was the second time his cultivation level had fallen. Compared to the first time, he had a lot more experience and was not anxious at all. Instead, he was very calm. Compared to the Cliff of Death, this place was safer. He could fully immerse himself in the battle. During this time, many things had happened in the endless land outside the Cliff of Death. In particular, the four branches had announced something together, and it shook the entire Origin world. In the Origin world, all experts of the Devouring Demon clan who met the requirements of the four major branches could enter the sacred land to cultivate. While everyone was overjoyed, they also felt that a storm was coming. The void was filled with an oppressive aura. All the major manas were secretly preparing for the impending disaster. As for the young geniuses who had entered the dragon-slaying cave, they had all fallen. Because of this, all the major manas had suffered heavy losses, especially the Flying Phoenix mana and the Ghost mana. The death of the young geniuses of these two manas was a huge blow to them. It was understood that the Flying Phoenix Mana Lord was still looking for Fang Chen. He hated Fang Chen to the core and had threatened to kill him even if he escaped to the Forbidden Zone. However, the Ghost Mana was the complete opposite. After Fang Chen's escape, the Ghost Mana gradually quieted down. Ghost Mana Territory, City Lord Mana. The demon corrosive ant had transformed into a smaller human form. He sat on a wooden armchair, holding a teacup and sipping tea. He glanced at the Ghost Mana Lord not far away. The latter was shrouded in an oppressive dark aura. In order to help you stop the murderer, I paid a heavy price and woke up prematurely, the demon corroding ant said in a low voice. I hope you can fulfill your promise to me, Mana Head. Ever since Fang Chen had escaped, the demon corroding ants had been smashing the City Lord's mansion and communicating with the Ghost Mana's Lord, hoping to get what they had promised. I won't give you anything less. The Ghost Mana Lord said in a hoarse voice. However, there is one more thing that I hope we can work together on. The demon corroding ant turned his head and looked deeply at the Ghost Palace Lord, asking, what is it? Samsara. When the Ghost Mana Lord uttered these two words, the devil corroding ant's expression abruptly changed. He leapt to his feet and forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart. He stared fixedly at the Ghost Mana Lord and said word by word, I can't do it. Reincarnation was the ultimate mystery that even supreme experts pursued. If one's strength was too weak, once they came into contact with reincarnation, they would die without a doubt. If the devil corroding ant was at his peak, he might have been interested in reincarnation. However, the current him had no other thoughts about reincarnation, and even felt a trace of fear in his heart. The scene of the devil corroding ant clan's destruction appeared in his mind. One of the enemies was related to reincarnation. His strength made one's heart tremble, and the devil corroding ant would never forget it. You have been sleeping in my Ghost Mana's territory, so you should know very well that the Ghost Mana is different from other manas. It is very special. The Ghost Mana Lord said with a face full of confidence, I have spent hundreds of millions of years and finally found a clue. However, my former good friend has been hindering me in the dark. He even came to dissuade me when I invited you to come out. You don't have to interfere with reincarnation. I need you to help me kill that good friend of mine at the critical moment. The Ghost Mana Lord stated his condition. Huff. The devil corroding ant breathed a sigh of relief and returned to his armchair. I can kill someone, but I will never touch reincarnation. Speaking up to here, he solemnly reminded the Ghost Mana Lord, you should remember Supreme Fu Jian from the Chaos Realm, right? It is said that he died because he touched reincarnation. I have absolute confidence that if I succeed, I will have the hope of becoming a peerless expert on par with the devouring demon patriarch. At that time, the entire chaos void will be under my command. The Ghost Mana Lord was very ambitious. Whoosh. As he spoke, he took out a large amount of worldly treasures from his bosom. I promised you before, not a single one less. I have also increased it tenfold. Go back and wait for my news. The devil corroding ant took a deep look at the Ghost Mana Lord, then took the items away. After he left, a phantom appeared in the darkness. Will he believe you? This person was the mysterious expert who had stopped the Ghost Manor Lord from pursuing Fang Chen. There was a trace of indifference on his face. We've been fighting for so many years. If even you are willing to cooperate with me, why wouldn't the devil corroding ants do the same? The Ghost Manor's Lord shrugged. He and his good brother had once turned into enemies and became mortal enemies. However, he also had to thank Fang Chen. If not for his appearance, they would not have been able to cooperate again, and he would not have been able to speed up his exploration of reincarnation. And the devil corroding ant happened to be within his range of use. Don't worry, when the time comes, you can pretend to kill me. When the devil corroding ant attacks you, we will work together and throw it into the bottomless abyss, letting it explore the way. The Ghost Manor Lord licked his dry lips and said eerily, reincarnation is too profound, and no one can touch it. I will use my fists to break through reincarnation. If such words were to spread, everyone would think that the Ghost Manor Lord had gone crazy. However, the mysterious expert standing in front of him did not think that he was arrogant. In short, be careful. Fang Chen's appearance allowed them to see the corner of reincarnation that they had been searching for. This also pushed the two of them to cooperate. As long as they could find the right entrance to reincarnation, they were confident that they could break through reincarnation. On this day, there was also a slight change in the primitive tribe. White Ape was summoned and once again came to the core of the primitive tribe. He followed the endless void and saw an old man who was cultivating. He was punching. Although it seemed chaotic, if one looked carefully, they would notice that every time he punched, it would cause the heavenly energy to fluctuate. That person was Tiger Venerable's disciple. White Ape frowned, not knowing what important matter the primitive tribe had summoned him for. He has Tiger Venerable's aura on him. Could it be? White Ape seemed to have guessed something. He shook his head and collected his thoughts. Tiger Venerable's disciple's figure instantly disappeared from his sight. At this time, a huge head appeared in front of him. Chapter 3809. The Chaos Realm was dark and boundless. A war no less intense than the Godsfall War was breaking out in the Chaos Realm. With the invasion of Carefree Manor, Bright King Manor, and other forces, the entire Chaos battlefield had become unusually bloody. Countless demon devourers were madly devouring the beings of the Chaos Realm. The top experts of the Chaos Realm finally couldn't hold back and began to discuss countermeasures. The entire Godsfall battlefield was filled with blood and gore. At the end of the reincarnation road was an illusion. No one could touch reincarnation. Even the Supreme Sovereign was only a representative of reincarnation. He had never touched the true reincarnation. However, since he presided over reincarnation in this era, he was the leader of the Chaos Realm. Ever since Fang Chen had reincarnated and entered the origin world, he had been paying close attention to the situation in the Chaos Realm. Previously, he had acted to prevent the demon devourers from entering the primordial chaos and attacking Fang Chen's hometown. Now, the flames of war had broken out and smoke filled the air. Everyone was deeply troubled by war. At the end of the reincarnation road, the Supreme Sovereign slowly opened his eyes. Behind him, Bloodline King and the others had already come out and re-entered the battle. At this time, splash! The moment the Supreme Sovereign opened his eyes, the endless sea of bitterness suddenly surged and a phantom appeared out of thin air. How's the progress in the origin world? The illusory figure asked in a hoarse voice. His voice seemed to contain an eternal will, which made people tremble. However, the Supreme Sovereign seemed to have expected his appearance. He sat cross-legged at the end of the reincarnation road and said, "Everything is going according to plan. All the foreshadowing we've planted back then is leading him to it." However, the Supreme Sovereign seemed to have something he couldn't say. "You mean the primitive races?" the Phantom asked. The Supreme Sovereign nodded, a ripple appearing on his calm face. He said calmly, "Back then, Supreme Fu Jian and the primitive races were inextricably linked. However, in the end, the primitive races betrayed their ancestral teachings and didn't attack the demon devourers. Now that Fang Chen has entered the origin world and possesses the perfect bloodline, they must be able to sense it. the Supreme Sovereign was worried that the primitive races would expose Fang Chen's information. Once Fang Chen's identity was exposed, the entire origin world would besiege him. Don't worry, I can guarantee that. Not long ago, I had a talk with the primitive tribes. They felt very guilty about what happened back then and promised me that it would never happen again. They have also sensed the threat of the demon-devouring clan leader. Once he comes out of seclusion, he will cause immeasurable damage to the entire chaotic world. He might even wipe out the primitive clans from the world. Therefore, this time, the primitive races are standing together with our primal chaos realm. They have also agreed to guide us in the dark and send people to protect Fang Chen. The Grand Monarch shook his head. Even so, the outsiders were unreliable. The primal chaos realm wanted to save itself, and all of the pressure was on Fang Chen. Only by transforming his perfect bloodline to the pinnacle and allowing him to step into the primal chaos paragon level would he be able to resolve all of this. The primal chaos realm has been plotting for hundreds of millions of years to completely destroy the demon-devouring clan and obtain a new life. However, for countless years, everyone has failed. We have no choice but to stake all of our hopes on Fang Chen, the Supreme Sovereign said. Great Senior said, he is the cultivator with the strongest perception and talent I have seen in all these years. If even he fails, then my primal chaos realm's destiny will be exhausted. If Fang Chen were here, he would definitely be shocked. The Supreme Sovereign had praised him for being unparalleled in the world, and that his talent was much stronger than that of Supreme Fu Jian. Unfortunately, he was now tempering himself in the shattered space of the origin world's death cliff and had no way of knowing what was happening in the primal chaos realm. I know what you are worried about. We have been plotting for hundreds of millions of years, and there are definitely more than this. Although some old bastards have fallen into a deep sleep, they can instantly wake up when the primal chaos realm is in danger, the Supreme Sovereign said. He seemed to know the secrets of the primal chaos realm like the back of his hand. That's right. The Supreme Sovereign suddenly asked, as the representative of samsara in this era, can you control the endless sea of bitterness and the path of reincarnation? The Supreme Sovereign shook his head, no one can touch samsara. Even I am just a puppet. If I could really explore the secrets of samsara, then our primal chaos realm wouldn't have to be like this. Samsara was too mysterious, and no one could touch it. Hearing this, the Supreme Sovereign's heart trembled. Among the top masters of the primal chaos realm, the Supreme Sovereign was the one closest to samsara. Even he said so, and his words were full of reverence for samsara. One could imagine how terrifying samsara was. The Supreme Sovereign calmed himself down and changed the subject. Recently, the primal chaos realm has been a little chaotic. Should we take action? The Supreme Sovereign shook his head. This is intentional. The current war has no impact on the foundation of our primal chaos realm, and this will attract the attention of the demon-devouring clan. It can also be considered as a disguised way to relieve the pressure on Fang Chen. Okay, then I'll go prepare first, the Supreme Sovereign said. Before he left, he was stopped by the Supreme Sovereign. Pay attention to the primal chaos realm. It was created by Supreme Sovereign Fu Jian, and it is also Fang Chen's hometown. Once his family and friends die, it will have an impact on him. I know. Buzz. The Supreme Sovereign dissipated, and the endless sea of bitterness regained its calm. Layers of waves rippled. A peaceful aura filled the air. If someone saw this scene, they would definitely not associate the peaceful sea with the endless sea of bitterness. After all, in people's cognition, the endless sea of bitterness represented all the suffering in the world. It must be an incomparably dangerous place. Origin World, Death Cliff. On the 7th day of entering the broken space, Fang Chen finally killed a 3rd-level Saint King monster with his own strength, and his realm also smoothly returned to the peak of the Saint King realm. Whoosh! Fang Chen breathed a sigh of relief, his eyes looking at the huge body lying in a pool of blood. He felt the power in his body circulating endlessly, but every time it was about to break through a bottleneck, it was restrained. It's still not working. Although the peak of the Saint King realm was already very good for ordinary 5-element Saint realm experts, it was just the beginning for Fang Chen. His current goal was to quickly return to the peak of the Saint King realm, and then sprint toward the peak of the Saint King realm. At the same time, he was also constantly comprehending the origin of wood. I wonder how my hometown is doing. Suddenly, he thought of the primal chaos realm, his wife Star and Moon, his daughter Fang Shi, his sons Fang Han and Fang Yun, and his good brothers Barbarian, Qing Hu, and other old friends. His eyes became more and more determined. He clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, "For you, I will succeed." Chapter 38:10. Right now, Fang Chen needed to race against time, racing against the Grim Reaper. After all, his cultivation was too low, which made it difficult for him to move around in the Cliff of Death. It was too difficult to get a ghost weapon, and he might even die. This broken space was simply the best place for him to cultivate. His heart was filled with gratitude towards Lung Xian. Continue. In such a short amount of time, his cultivation had already recovered to the peak of Saint Kinghood. Furthermore, he could feel that the power hidden within him was flowing endlessly. Once it was fully activated, he had hopes of reaching the peak of Saint Kinghood in a single step. Of course, many things had happened in the outside world while he was cultivating, especially in the Forbidden Zone. The old white ape was surrounded by dense towering trees. His ears moved slightly, and he could hear the sound of a stream coming from afar. He stood quietly, and his eyes flickered as if he was thinking about something. Not long ago, he saw Tiger Lord's disciple cultivating in the Forbidden Zone. He was shocked. Did Tiger Lord not die back then? If Venerable who was still alive, what about the other 3 Venerables under Supreme Fu Jian's command? Was Lord Pluto still alive? A series of questions came to his mind. However, just as he was deep in thought, his surroundings suddenly fell silent. Even the stream stopped flowing, and a huge palm face appeared in front of him. As soon as the face appeared, the entire world was covered by a heavy power. It was extremely oppressive. The old white ape bowed deeply to the face and said, "Greetings, emissary." As a subordinate tribe of the primitive tribes, the white apes had a very low status. In fact, they were equivalent to the primitive tribes' fighters, and they dealt with things that the primitive tribes didn't want to do. For example, they took care of Fang Chen in the dragon-slaying cave. The old white ape knew that the face in front of him was the emissary between the primitive tribes and the white ape tribe. As for the real primitive tribes, he had never seen them. "Do you know why I called you here?" The giant face wriggled, and a quaint and majestic voice echoed in the old white ape's mind. The latter shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. However, he guessed that this matter was most likely related to Fang Chen. "Lung Xian has recovered." The giant face's next sentence made the old white ape instantly fall into a daze. After a long while, he finally regained his senses. His pitch-black eyes stared intently at the giant face as he hurriedly asked, "Lord Messenger, where is Lung Xian?" Clearly, the old white ape also knew Lung Xian, and from the looks of it, they had some interactions. "She's at the Cliff of Death. She's with Fang Chen now. Her revival means that the plan back then has failed completely. She also knows that she is using the last of her strength to condense Fang Chen's nascent divinity. Tao manifestation of the primordial spirit." Old White Ape immediately thought of this, but he soon shook his head and smiled bitterly. It was extremely difficult to manifest one's primordial spirit. Fang Chen had only cultivated for a few years. Since ancient times, there had been countless geniuses who had been stuck at this bottleneck. Some had even paid the price of their lives but still failed to manifest their Tao. Why would she do that? Old White Ape said bitterly. Lung Xian had already fallen back then. What had recovered now was just an obsession. If she helped Fang Chen's nascent divinity to manifest his Tao, she would eventually die completely and her soul would be scattered. For a cultivator, the scattering of one's soul meant that one would completely disappear from the world. The devouring demon clan has been restless recently. The 4 major divisions are trying their best to recruit people. I summoned you here because I've received a mission from the clan. The giant face messenger said, "Lead the clan out of the life forbidden zone and go to the 4 major divisions. Create trouble for them and try your best to kill the geniuses of the devouring demon clan." Old White Ape's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. Then, a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. After so many years, The primitive tribes were finally willing to let the White Ape clan reappear in the world. Old White Ape's memories gradually flashed. Back then, when he was with Lord Ming, the general under Fu Jian, they had fought fiercely against the devouring demon clan. After that, he had lived in the life-forbidden zone for countless years and worked for the primitive tribes. All right, I'll go back and prepare now. Old White Ape suppressed the excitement in his heart and cupped his fists. Whoosh! The giant face opened its bloody mouth and a jade pendant floated in front of Old White Ape. Old White Ape instinctively caught it with his hand. Immediately, a gentle power entered his palm. You've lived in the life-forbidden zone for many years. Now that you've reappeared, you'll be rejected by the heavenly way of the source world. Carry this jade pendant with you at all times and cannot be damaged in the slightest. It can help you hide the secrets of the heavens. The giant face messenger warned, remember, once the jade pendant is damaged, you must return to the life-forbidden zone as quickly as possible. Otherwise, your clan will be annihilated. Old White Ape's heart trembled. Of course, he did not think that the giant face messenger was joking. He committed the giant face messenger's words to memory and quickly returned to the White Ape clan. Buzz. After he left, the fog dissipated and Tiger Master's disciple appeared in front of him. Whoosh! He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the giant face messenger. You let the White Ape clan reappear to create trouble for the 4 major divisions and kill the geniuses of the devouring demon clan. Are you purposely attracting the attention of the devouring demon clan and buying time for Fang Chen? The giant face messenger was silent. Tiger Master's disciple continued to ask, since you've helped the chaotic realm so much, why did you refuse when Supreme Venerable Fu Jian brought Master and the others to the life-forbidden zone? The primitive clans are very complicated. It's not what you see. The giant face messenger sighed. Cultivate well. There are less than 3 years until the test. If you fail, only death awaits you. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, the giant face in the sky dissipated. Tiger Master's disciple's eyes flashed with determination. I will succeed. At the Cliff of Death, the ancestors of the monster clans joined forces with Madman Jian to suppress Princess Huang and took away her token. However, no matter how they tried to control it, the token dimmed. In the end, they gave up. They stared at Princess Huang and threatened, now, we'll give you one last chance to live, as long as you're willing to cooperate with us. Chimph, you want me to cooperate? Dream on, Princess Huang said coldly. The token was given to her by her master. It was a token of the primitive clans. No one else could control it except her. Obviously, the ancestors of the monster clans and Madman Jian were aware of this, so they did not kill her. I'd like to see how hard your mouth can be. Madman Jian held a long sword in his hand and was about to stab Princess Huang, but he was stopped by the ancestors of the monster clans. My clan has a soul-searching technique. Chapter 38:11. The Cliff of Death, Shattered Space. Fang Chen fell into a stone forest. He originally thought that it was just an ordinary place, but when he fell into it, he was shocked to find that this stone forest actually contained a shocking sword array. Yes, it was a sword array. He could clearly feel that the surrounding stones were changing at any time, and it was too difficult to capture the trajectory. During this process, Fang Chen also found that there were sword auras in the stone forest from time to time. He even suspected that this was a sword tomb. After all, only a sword tomb could nurture such a shocking sword array. Sword tomb? Fang Chen frowned and looked around seriously. With the current strength of his primordial spirit, his divine sense could instantly cover the entire stone forest. Roar! Suddenly, an angry beast roar sounded, and then a huge monster rushed in front of Fang Chen. The latter did not hesitate and stabbed out with his sword. Crack! The huge monster was stabbed by Fang Chen's sword, and it let out a miserable cry before its body exploded. At this moment, Fang Chen felt that the sword in his hand was actually imprisoned in mid-air uncontrollably. The shocking sword array in the stone forest was completely activated, and a layer of grey aura instantly shrouded the entire stone forest. At the same time, those stones exploded, and dazzling long swords stood on the ground. This is... Seeing this scene, Fang Chen was stunned. The Supreme Sword Array? He really could not think of anyone below the supreme realm who could set up such a powerful sword array. No. His divine sense fluctuated, and he found some abnormal changes in the long swords. This made him conclude that the shocking sword array should not be the supreme sword array. Could it be left behind by a supreme sword Dao expert? Fang Chen shook his head. A strong curiosity arose in his heart, and the blood in his body was also flowing rapidly. As a sword cultivator, it was impossible to be indifferent in the face of such a powerful sword array. He decided to personally explore the mystery of the shocking sword array. Voila! He took a step forward and arrived on a smaller rock. With a shio sound, the rock exploded, and a multicolored sword appeared out of nowhere. A sword light that made him feel a destructive aura instantly shot out. Bang bang bang! He hurriedly defended himself. The sword light shattered, but he was also forced to retreat. What happened? Fang Chen was surprised. At this time, the stone forest had already changed its appearance. He was trapped in the shocking sword array and couldn't find a way out. While he was tirelessly exploring the heaven shocking sword formation, on a nearby mountain peak, there was a person who was staring at him with his pitch-black eyes. Humans from the Chaos Realm? This person was shrouded in thick fog and his voice was hoarse. When he said the words humans of the Chaos Realm, killing intent filled the air. After so many years, has the Chaos Realm risen from the ashes? How dare you come here? Back then, after the great battle at the Cliff of Death, the shattered space was born. There were many remnant auras of powerful experts, as well as inheritances. It was even rumored that there were descendants of primitive tribes here. Of course, these were all legends, and no one could prove it. Whoosh! The figure shrouded in thick fog opened his mouth and spat out a black substance. Then, under his control, the black substance exploded in the sky, blooming with colorful light. At the same time, in every corner of the shattered space, there were figures moving. The young master is summoning. Is there something important? Let's go and take a look. These people were the remaining experts of the devouring demon clan and some of their descendants. The black substance just now was the summoning token. A few days later, in the stone forest, the people of the devouring demon clan gathered. Everyone was in awe of the figure shrouded in thick fog. Young master, why did you summon us? A human from the Chaos Realm has entered the stone forest. I want him dead, the figure said coldly. He is courting death. How dare a human from the Chaos Realm come here? Do they think the devouring demon clan is afraid of them? Young master, please let me fight. When everyone heard that there was a human from the Chaos Realm, they were filled with righteous indignation and wanted to fight. However, the figure in the fog looked around at the crowd and waved his hand for silence. He then said, "The great battle at the Cliff of Death had a great impact on the entire origin world. My demon-devouring clan was also greatly shaken. We have been trapped at the Cliff of Death and have not been able to leave to this day. We do not know what the situation is like outside." After a pause, the young master continued, "The devouring demon clan will eventually rule the world. We can't live here forever. We were born as members of the devouring demon clan, so we must fight for our clan." Fight for our clan. Everyone's morale was high. Perhaps we can get a lot of useful information from this human from the Chaos Realm, the young master said. Young master, don't worry. We know what to do. The young master of the thick fog pointed at the stone forest covered by the Heaven Shocking Sword Array and said, "The first layer of the Heaven Shocking Sword Array in the stone forest has been activated. Currently, only Saint Kings can enter, otherwise, the remnant Supreme Sword Intent will kill us." Everyone looked at each other. When they heard about the Supreme Sword Will, they felt a chill in their hearts. Soon, more than a dozen Saint Kings stood together and waited for orders. "After you enter, it'll be best if you can capture the human from the Chaos Realm. If not, destroy the stone forest to activate the second level of the sword formation." When the second level of the sword formation was activated, only Saint Emperors could enter. When the third level of the sword formation was activated, only saints could enter. Otherwise, once they broke into the stone forest, they would be killed by the Supreme Sword Will. No one dared to be careless in the face of the Supreme Sword Will. "Are you ready?" the young master of thick fog asked. Ready. More than a dozen Saint Kings of the devouring demon clan shouted in unison. The young master of thick fog nodded and gave the order. Buzz. More than a dozen people entered the stone forest in a single file. At this moment, Fang Chen, who was studying the sword formation in the stone forest, suddenly noticed the devouring demon clan. Devouring demon clan? Fang Chen was stunned, but then he breathed a sigh of relief. More than a dozen devouring demon clan members were all Saint Kings. They were no threat to him. Human from the Chaos Realm, how dare you come here? You're courting death. The leader of the group shouted in a low voice, and more than a dozen Saint King realm cultivators moved to surround Fang Chen. Humph. Fang Chen sneered, without any fear on his face. You think you can do it? Boom. In an instant, a battle broke out. More than a dozen Saint Kings besieged Fang Chen, but the result was not satisfactory. In the outside world, the young master of thick fog looked at the battle in the stone forest with a gloomy face. A bunch of trash. More than a dozen people were unable to capture a human from the chaotic realm. This made him very angry, but there was no other way. The supreme sword will was too strong, and he did not dare to take the risk. He could only hope that these Saint King realm clansmen would be able to activate the second level of the heaven-shocking sword array. Chapter 38:12. Sword Chi swept through the stone forest. Fang Chen showed no fear in the face of more than a dozen Saint Kings. He held his sword in his hand and displayed his powerful sword skills. Wang. Invincible fighting spirit filled his entire body. His body vibrated with power. He had cultivated for so long and had only just recovered to the Saint King realm. Now, he was only one step away from the Saint King realm, but it was difficult to cross. Just then, more than a dozen people came to practice. Boom. The invincible sword skill had evolved to its limit. Every strike was close to the limit of sword principle. In a flash, Fang Chen swung his sword 9 times. 9 sword lights crisscrossed in the void, suppressing the sword chi in the shocking sword array. At this time, more than a dozen Saint Kings felt Fang Chen's strength. They no longer held back and activated their strongest power. They attacked with lightning speed, trying to suppress Fang Chen. Kill! Fang Chen shouted and leaped. His body was extremely agile. In an instant, he was behind a martial artist. When the martial artist realized it, it was too late. He shook his wrist and his sword pierced through the head of the devouring demon clan member. Hiss hiss hiss. Fang Chen knew that the devouring demon clan had a powerful divine ability. As long as their blood was still there, they would be immortal. Their body structure was completely different from the human race in the chaotic world. Therefore, the moment he pierced through the head of the devouring demon clan member, Fang Chen activated his perfect bloodline. In the blink of an eye, the devouring demon blood in the body of the devouring demon clan member was completely refined. Ah! The devouring demon clan member screamed miserably. His body convulsed and he lost his vitality in an instant. He fell into the stone forest. Catcher! Sword Chi rampaged and minced his corpse into pieces. Damn it! Outside the stone forest, the fog young master clenched his fist. His power vibrated and his fist punched through the ground. He was furious. A bunch of trash. You can't even deal with a Saint King realm human from the chaotic world. If it weren't for the limitation of his realm, he would have entered the chaotic stone forest and killed this human from the chaotic realm. Don't worry, young master. This human from the chaotic realm is proficient in swordsmanship. Earlier on, he had used a trick to secretly borrow the power of the heaven-startling sword formation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill our fellow tribesman. A tribesman whispered. That's right. A lowly creature from the primal chaos world dares to come to the death cliff? You're simply courting death. H. Kill him and then destroy the primal chaos realm. The crowd howled in rage. However, they could only watch on helplessly as the battle in the stone forest continued. There was nothing they could do to help. Attack together. Let's end this quickly. As if they had realized how powerful Fang Chen was, someone roared. Immediately, the remaining 10 or so people joined forces to attack. Their auras locked onto Fang Chen. Their power converged, forming a terrifying fist that heavily smashed into Fang Chen's body. "It's about time." Seeing this, Fang Chen whispered and attacked with all his might. Poochie. Under his powerful swordsmanship, the devouring demon clan cultivators could not withstand a single blow. More than a dozen Saint Kings joining forces could not withstand a single blow from him. Rumble. A deafening sound reverberated through the sky. Fang Chen began to counterattack, stabbing out with his sword again and again. Screams of agony filled the air. The Saint Kings of the devouring demon clan fell one after another in the stone forest. Destroy the heaven-startling sword formation. The devouring demon clan outside also realized that something was wrong and shouted loudly. The few remaining Saint Kings no longer attacked Fang Chen. Instead, they attacked wildly in all directions, trying to activate the second level of the heaven-startling sword formation. Fang Chen's eyes flashed. Although he did not know what they were doing, his intuition told him that the heaven-startling sword formation seemed to be changing. "Stop them." Fang Chen growled and immediately increased the speed of his sword. Poochie. Wherever the sword light passed, the devouring demon clan cultivators were unable to resist and were instantly killed. In just a quarter of an hour, of the dozen or so Saint King realm cultivators, only one remained. The rest had all died under Fang Chen's sword. This man's body trembled as his heart filled with fear, constantly retreating. "You can't kill me. Otherwise, the young master will not let you go." He used the young master of the thick fog to threaten Fang Chen. "Are you threatening me?" Fang Chen sneered. He was comprehending the sword in the stone forest and had no interaction with this so-called young master. The latter wanted to kill him, and now he was threatening him. Moreover, he was a human from the chaotic realm. He was a natural enemy of the devouring demon clan from the source world. Fang Chen snorted coldly and lowered his sword. Seeing this, the remaining devouring demon clan cultivator turned pale. He gritted his teeth and burned his blood essence, urging the power in his body to self-destruct. "If we die together," he roared angrily. Then, his body was shrouded in thick flames. He rushed to the center of the heaven-startling sword formation, trying to activate the second level of the sword formation. Invincible sword technique. Fang Chen flicked his wrist and performed the invincible sword technique again. The sword light that swept across the sky carried with it an indestructible power. It cut the devouring demon clan cultivator in half. Boom. At this moment, the upper body of the devouring demon clan cultivator exploded. The terrifying power swept through the entire heaven-startling sword formation. His head fell to the center of the sword formation. Dong dong dong. When he self-destructed, the entire heaven-startling sword formation shook. In the outside world, the young master of the thick fog clenched his fists. His dark eyes stared at the heaven-startling sword formation. The other Saint Kings of the devouring demon clan were also watching closely. As soon as the second level of the heaven-startling sword formation was activated, they would immediately enter and suppress the humans from the chaotic realm. Hiss hiss hiss. However, to their disappointment, after the heaven-startling sword formation shook violently, it gradually calmed down. "How could this be?" The young master of the thick fog roared. He was about to activate the second level of the sword formation, but he failed in the end. "Idiots, a bunch of idiots." The young master of the thick fog became more and more furious. If the dozen Saint Kings had self-destructed as soon as they entered, they would definitely have been able to activate the second level of the sword formation. Who would have thought that these idiots would die because they had underestimated the enemy? This way, his plan had failed. All his efforts had been for naught. Something's not right. At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed. The young master of the thick fog raised his head and looked at the heaven-startling sword formation. He suddenly discovered that at the center of the sword formation, a spark had suddenly appeared in an inconspicuous place. This spark seemed to be the fuse that had triggered the transformation of the sword formation. The second level of the sword formation? The young lord of the thick fog shouted with joy on his face. Hiss hiss hiss. The spark was small at first, but as time passed, it gradually bloomed and soon enveloped the entire center of the sword formation. Fang Chen also felt the temperature rapidly rising. Fang Chen frowned. The sword qi in his body was moving strangely. The sword in his hand also let out a loud sword hum. What's going on? His intuition told him that the heaven-startling sword formation was transforming. Chapter 38:13. Inside the heaven-shocking sword formation, a flame slowly blossomed. Instantly, Fang Chen felt a ferocious force surging toward him, causing his expression to change greatly. With a flicker, he arrived at the center of the heaven-shocking sword formation. This is... Fang Chen frowned. Although he did not specialize in arrays, his attainments in arrays were still extremely high. In a flash, he discovered the uniqueness of the center of the array and immediately thought of a possibility. Boom! 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 The wisp of flame above the center of the array completely blossomed. Terrifying power continuously poured into the center of the array, causing the sword array to emit a dazzling light. Sword qi swept across the heavens and earth as if it contained an ancient sword will that was above the sword array. The blood in Fang Chen's body throbbed. His body trembled involuntarily. The long sword in his hand let out a loud cry uncontrollably. In the next instant, the second level of the sword array was activated. Murderous sword qi crisscrossed within the sword array. Fang Chen's figure constantly flashed as he dodged the murderous sword qi. The sword array has become stronger. When the sword array became stronger, Fang Chen also noticed that the Fog Young Lord and the others outside were smiling. Then, he saw some Saint Kings of the Devouring Demon clan rushing into the stone forest. Could it be, combined with the fact that only a dozen Saint Kings of the Devouring Demon clan had entered the stone forest, Fang Chen vaguely guessed something. Before the Saint King of the Devouring Demon clan died, he self-detonated his body to draw out the power in his body. It was not to kill himself, but to activate the second level of the sword array. In other words, the Fog Young Lord and the others did not enter because the sword array had many restrictions and they could not enter. Saint King Realm. A cold killing intent flashed in Fang Chen's eyes. The corpses of the Saint King of the Devouring Demon clan had all been minced by the sword qi. Fang Chen stood on a rock with a long sword in his hand. The sword's cry shook the heavens. Human from the chaotic world, you're dead meat. The origin world had been created by the Demon Devouring clan's patriarch and was their base camp. Yet, someone had dared to kill the humans of the Chaos Realm. Their hearts were filled with rage. Swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, a few Saint Kings of the Devouring Demon clan entered the stone forest. Whoosh. Without saying a word, they immediately surrounded and annihilated Fang Chen. With a thought, Fang Chen's four origins revolved around his body. He displayed the invincible swordsmanship. A rumbling sound resounded through the sky. The entire stone forest reverberated with a deafening sound. Crack! The Saint Emperor Devourer closest to Fang Chen was caught off guard. He was pierced through by the sword and instantly fell into a pool of blood. You are courting death. When the other members of the Demon Devouring tribe saw this, their faces turned ferocious as they roared in anger. However, Fang Chen used his sword qi to resonate with the sword qi of the heaven-shocking sword formation. His speed soared to the extreme. He came and went without a trace. Using the spatial leap, he killed 3 Saint Kings of the Devouring Demon clan in just a few breaths' time. This scene completely enraged the Fog Young Master. He stomped his foot and the surrounding ground instantly collapsed. All Saint Kings, enter the stone forest. Suppress him at all costs. How dare he slaughter his fellow clansmen right under his nose? He was extremely furious. Whoosh! The Saint Kings of the Devouring Demon clan swarmed into the heaven-shocking sword formation and surrounded Fang Chen. Kill! With that command, all of the Devouring Demons tribe unleashed their most powerful attacks. Even a sage would not be able to fend off their all-out attack. You are dead meat. The leader of the Devouring Demon clan roared. Dense energy gathered above the heaven-shocking sword formation and instantly condensed into a great void handprint. Under the control of everyone, it crashed down. At this moment, Fang Chen was not only not frightened, but he even had a faint smile on his face. Because, just then, he suddenly had an epiphany. His sword qi could actually resonate with the sword qi of the heaven-shocking sword formation. This discovery made him extremely excited. After being trapped in the heaven-shocking sword formation for so long, he had been exploring and studying it. Finally, he had gained something. Condense. Seeing that the great void handprint was about to land on him, Fang Chen roared. The sword in his hand drew a strange trajectory. In the next moment, a light screen completely condensed from sword chi appeared in front of Fang Chen and blocked the great void handprint. Crack. The great void handprint hit the light screen of sword chi heavily, but it could not shake the light screen of sword chi at all. It only lasted for a few seconds before being defeated. Boom. After the great void handprint shattered, the force that erupted sent everyone flying. How is this possible? The young lord of the thick fog exclaimed. His eyes widened as he stared at the light screen of sword chi. Heaven-shocking sword formation? He has comprehended the heaven-shocking sword formation? The young lord of the thick fog shook his head frantically. He could not accept the fact that the sword chi light screen in front of Fang Chen was giving off the same aura as the heaven-shocking sword formation. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The young lord of the thick fog knew better than anyone how terrifying the heaven-shocking sword formation in the stone forest was. Even those sword cultivators who claimed to be the most talented in sword principle could not comprehend it. How could a mere saint king comprehend it in such a short time? As expected. Fang Chen was secretly delighted. In fact, it was too difficult to comprehend the heaven-shocking sword formation. He only knew a little about it. The reason why he was able to condense the sword chi light screen at the critical moment was also because of a trick. He used the invincible sword art to communicate with the core of the heaven-shocking sword formation. When the second layer of the heaven-shocking sword formation was activated, he took the opportunity to insert a wisp of sword will into the core of the formation. Of course, this was not enough. After all, this was the legendary heaven-shocking sword formation. However, when Fang Chen's power vibrated, he vaguely felt a wisp of supreme sword will. He had absorbed the power of Sky Dragon Supreme's heart and formed a resonance with the Supreme Sword Will. This caused the Supreme Sword Will to change the trajectory of the heaven-shocking sword formation and condense the sword chi light screen. Whoosh! Fang Chen took a deep breath and looked at the sword chi light screen in front of him. With this light screen, the Saint Emperors of the Devouring Demon Clan could not do anything to him. If the third layer of the heaven-shocking sword formation could not be activated, the Saint Realm martial artists could not enter at all. This way, he was temporarily safe. Kill him for me. The young lord of the thick fog's expression changed. He seemed to have thought of something and roared angrily. The Saint Kings of the Demon Devouring Clan who had been knocked back launched another attack. However, their attacks were useless because of the barrier of light. The power of the sword chi light screen is disappearing. He can't hold on for long. The young lord of the thick fog said coldly. Chapter 38:14. The heaven-startling sword formation contained a strand of paragon sword intent. Fang Chen was shocked by this. However, on second thought, such a heaven-defying formation like the heaven-startling sword formation could only be set up by a paragon. Now, he had used the power of the Sky Dragon Supreme's heart to temporarily communicate with the Supreme Sword Will, forming a resonance with it and condensing the sword chi light screen before him. The Saint Emperors of the Devouring Demon Clan attacked madly, but it was useless. The sword chi light screen was too strong, and they couldn't break it with their strength. Boom! 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 Some Saint Emperors didn't believe it and tried to destroy the base of the heavenly sword matrix. But it led to a series of tragedies. Miserable screams came from their mouths as they were instantly turned into ashes. Don't move! Someone roared. Immediately, the others all stopped their attacks. Their hearts were in turmoil, and their bodies were trembling. The sword formation was too powerful, it was impossible to break through, and they were also unable to break through the light screen made of sword chi. For a moment, they were stuck in a dilemma. Young Master. The saint beside the young master whispered, "We can't go on like this. That guy seems to have activated the Supreme Sword Will and condensed the sword chi light screen. We can't break it at all." Hearing this, the young master's face turned ferocious, and his eyes were filled with endless killing intent. Damn that guy! He clenched his fists, and wanted to rush in himself. But the heavenly sword matrix's restrictions were too strong. Only by activating the third layer of the matrix could a saint enter. Seal off the stone forest. Don't let anyone near it. The young master said in a hoarse voice, I want to see how long his sword chi light screen can last. He also suspected that the supreme sword will couldn't be refined so easily. Fang Chen must have activated the supreme sword will by accident, and that was why he was protected by the sword chi light screen. After a long time, the supreme sword will would fall asleep again, and the sword chi light screen would naturally disappear. Then, how would he resist the devouring demon clan? Thinking of this, the young master took a deep breath, withdrew his killing intent, and left the stone forest. Rumble. The saint emperors of the devouring demon clan all left the stone forest, leaving Fang Chen alone. They all left. He looked around and suddenly realized that the devouring demons had sealed off the stone forest. Are they trying to trap me? Whoosh. Taking a deep breath, Fang Chen sat down cross-legged and threw himself into the heaven-shocking sword array, attempting to communicate with the sovereign sword intent once again. He was clearer than anyone about the predicament he was in. After all, there was a limit to the strength of the heavenly dragon sovereign's heart. Furthermore, the sovereign sword intent contained the fiercest and most overbearing sword chi in the world. Once he activated it, he would draw fire to himself. Therefore, the most important thing now was to fully comprehend the heaven-shocking sword formation. Only by controlling the heaven-shocking sword formation would he have the hope of refining the supreme sword will. Whoosh. Fang Chen licked his dry lips. His heart was burning. Among all the sword cultivators in the world, who could resist the temptation of the supreme sword will? Even a powerful half-step supremacy realm sword cultivator would not be able to resist the temptation. Not to mention him. If he could refine the supreme sword will, his invincible sword Dao would be completely perfected, and it would even transform into a true great Dao. One had to know. All the Daos in the world ended in the great Dao. It was said that great Dao was simple, and all paths led to the same destination. In the world of cultivation, everyone's cultivation path was different, and so were their cultivation methods. However, their goal was the same, and that was to step onto the peak of martial arts. The so-called invincible sword Dao, massacre sword Dao, bloody sword Dao, hell sword Dao, Azura sword Dao, and so on. Thousands of sword Daos ultimately evolved in the direction of the great Dao of swords. A few months later. How is it? The young lord of the thick fog asked about the situation in the stone forest. The saint of the devouring demon clan shook his head. The situation was not optimistic. The human from the chaotic realm is comprehending the heaven-shocking sword formation. He mainly cultivates the sword Dao. If he really comprehended the path of the heaven-shocking sword formation, wouldn't it be? The saint of the devouring demon clan was afraid that Fang Chen would refine the supreme sword will. He's just a saint king. What right does he have to refine the supreme sword will? The young lord of the thick fog sneered. Even a pinnacle saint might not be able to refine the supreme sword will, so he was not worried at all. However, his patience was limited. He could not keep guarding near the stone forest, could he? Roar. However, at this moment, a deafening sound suddenly came from the distant horizon. The young lord of the thick fog clan's expression changed drastically. The saint of the devouring demon clan beside him shouted, "Oh no, it's the descendants of the primitive tribe." The words primitive tribe made all the devouring demon clan's expressions change. After all, this was a tribe that could fight against the devouring demon clan. In this broken space, the devouring demon clan's people were repeatedly slaughtered by the descendants of the primitive tribe. The reason why he lived here was to avoid being hunted down by the descendants of the primitive tribe. Young lord, hurry up and leave. We'll stop him, the saint of the devouring demon clan said hurriedly. The young lord of the thick fog clan had completely calmed down from his initial panic. He rolled his eyes and revealed a sinister smile. I was just thinking about how to break the heaven-shocking sword formation. They've come at the right time. Young lord, what are you planning to do? The saint of the devouring demon clan seemed to have guessed the young lord of the thick fog clan's plan. Lure the descendants of the primitive tribes to the chaotic stone forest. Tell our people to retreat and hide. The descendants of the primitive tribes will definitely be able to sense the sovereign sword intent. Once they know that someone is trying to refine the sovereign sword intent, they will definitely organize a group. At that time, there would definitely be two situations. The first was that the heaven-shocking sword formation would shatter, and the descendants of the primitive tribe would be injured to varying degrees. The devouring demon clan would then reap the benefits. The second was that the heaven-shocking sword formation was too strong, and the descendants of the primitive tribe would be angered by the supreme sword will and end up being destroyed. No matter what happened, it would be beneficial for the devouring demon clan. After all, even if the heaven-shocking sword formation was not broken, the descendants of the primitive tribe would die, and the devouring demon clan would have one less enemy. All right, I'll make the arrangements now, the saint of the devouring demon clan said. Far away, the descendants of the primitive tribe were conducting a thorough search. Old Lin, what did you find? The man called Old Lin put his ear to the ground and listened to the rhythm of the earth. After a long while, he stood up and pointed ahead. I sensed a very strong fluctuation of sword chi. Let's go take a look. Soon, the descendants of the primitive tribe discovered the stone forest. That's a sword formation. What a powerful sword formation. We didn't notice it before. Look, there's someone in the sword formation. In an instant, everyone's eyes were focused on Fang Chen. Someone was actually comprehending such a powerful sword formation. Old Lin and the others had a look of fear in their eyes. Chapter 38:15. The descendants of the primitive tribes stood in front of the stone forest, staring at Fang Chen with their dark eyes. They were shocked that someone was comprehending such a powerful sword formation. Who was this person? Why was he here? This sword formation is very powerful. Old Lin took a deep breath and said after a careful test. Based on his initial estimation, if the sword formation was fully activated, even a sage might not be able to withstand it. Old Lin even suspected that this formation was the work of a supreme being. Could it be? Old Lin's face suddenly changed. If this formation was really the work of a supreme being, then who was the martial artist in the sword formation? A supreme being? Or a descendant of a supreme being? It can't be a supreme being. Someone shook his head and denied Old Lin's guess. What a joke. The supreme being almost died in that fierce battle. If a new supreme being was born, how could the primitive tribes not know? Then, could he be a descendant of a supreme being? Someone else asked. Maybe it's a cultivator who accidentally broke into the sword array? Everyone was making wild guesses. Old Lin suddenly had a bold idea. If we can get the inheritance of the sword formation, can we leave the broken space and return to our tribe? Returning to the tribe was something that the descendants of the tribe yearned for day and night. Although they were the descendants of the primitive tribes, no one recognized them in the broken space. Only when they were strong could they be recognized by all forces. Once they got the inheritance of a supreme being, they could return to their tribe with their heads held high. Thinking of this, everyone looked at each other, their eyes full of passion. Since that guy can enter, there must be a loophole. Old Lin's face was full of excitement. He started to study the sword formation to see if there were any weak points or gaps. Let's look for it together. Soon, everyone from the primitive tribes went to look for the entrance of the sword formation. At this moment, the young master of the fog, who was hiding in the dark, sneered. A bunch of idiots. How dare they call themselves the descendants of the primitive tribes? How pathetic. They can't even enter the stone forest. Obviously, the young master of the fog had been hiding here for countless years. He knew the stone forest very well and could easily enter and exit the sword formation. However, the descendants of the primitive tribes were different. It was their first time encountering such a powerful sword formation, and none of them were good at swordsmanship. Moreover, they thought that this was a supreme being sword formation, so it must be extraordinary. Their thoughts were a little extreme. Young master, the saint from the devouring demon clan said, it won't be long before they find the entrance. However, even if they enter the stone forest, they might not be able to open the sword matrix. Keep an eye on them. Inform me as soon as they enter the stone forest, said the young master of the fog. "Send out an order for all of our people to prepare for battle." 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. For the 5 elements Saint Realm experts, 3 years was just the blink of an eye. Some of the old monsters had been cultivating for billions of years. During this period of time, the Death Cliff had been filled with undercurrents. Before the ghost artifact was born, the news had already spread like wildfire. Naturally, the Sword Lunatic and the Demonic Beast Patriarchs had also received the news. Bang! Sword Lunatic stabbed his sword into the ground and grabbed Princess Huang's neck. His killing intent surged. "Our patience is limited. I'll give you one last chance. If you tell us how to control the token, we can leave you with a complete corpse." Princess Huang snorted coldly, directly ignoring Sword Lunatic. In these 3 years, they had used all kinds of methods to force her, but she didn't give in. As long as the token was in her hand, they wouldn't dare to touch her. "You're courting death." Sword Lunatic tightened his grip. Princess Huang felt her breathing quicken, her throat hurt, and her body was weak. At this moment, the Demonic Beast Patriarchs arrived in time. "Stop." He stopped Sword Lunatic and said, "Take her away." "Done." Sword Lunatic's eyes lit up when he heard this. He hurriedly asked. The Demonic Beast Patriarchs nodded. Sword Lunatic released his grip and brought Princess Huang to a canyon. This canyon was very quiet and the surroundings were completely sealed. There was a black cauldron in the middle of the canyon. The Demonic Beast Patriarchs formed seals with both hands, awakening the power within the black cauldron. Sword Lunatic threw Princess Huang in front of the black cauldron. "I've said before that my clan has a soul-searching technique," the Demonic Beast Patriarchs said eerily. "If you don't cooperate, then I can only use the soul-searching technique." Before this, they didn't dare to use the soul-searching technique casually because they were afraid of the primitive races. After all, they didn't know what the primitive races would leave behind on Princess Huang. Once their identities were exposed and the primitive races were enraged, they wouldn't be able to complete their mission. "MHM?" Princess Huang's face flickered with a trace of fluctuation, but she soon calmed down. "BZZ." The Demonic Beast Patriarchs emitted a vast amount of energy that unceasingly flowed into the black cauldron. He chanted a complicated chant and not long later, the black cauldron was awakened. Traces of silver light drilled into Princess Huang's mind. Princess Huang had a pained expression as her body trembled. Not long later, her eyes turned blank and she lost the strength to struggle. "Soul-searching." The old ancestor of the demonic beasts roared. Under his control, the silver beam of light started to search Princess Phoenix's soul. Swordman watched nervously. If the soul search was successful, their chances of completing the mission would increase infinitely. BZZ. The Demonic Beast Patriarchs closed his eyes and sensed the information brought by the silver light. Not long later, his body began to tremble as excitement appeared on his face. Because the silver light had already found the method to control the token and was transmitting it to him. Ah! All of a sudden, the Demonic Beast Patriarchs let out a miserable cry. Golden runes appeared in Princess Huang's mind, directly suppressing the silver light. Next, a cold snort that seemed to have existed since ancient times reverberated in the air. "You dare to search the soul of a member of my primitive race?" This voice came from Princess Huang's master. As the sound of this voice faded, the golden runes completely devoured the silver light and formed a powerful rebounding force, severely injuring the Demonic Beast Patriarch's primordial spirit. Poochie. The Demonic Beast Patriarch's head almost exploded. His primordial spirit was severely injured and almost destroyed. He lost his combat strength and fell to the ground weakly. When Sword Lunatic saw this, he immediately controlled Princess Huang and came to the side of the Demonic Beast Patriarch. "How are you?" "I won't die," the Demonic Beast Patriarch said weakly. The primitive race left a restriction in her mind. "I can't search her soul." Princess Huang had a pained expression, but luckily, the soul-searching technique was useless against her. She heaved a sigh of relief. This way, she was still very valuable to the two of them. At least her life wouldn't be in danger for the time being. Chapter 38:16. The soul search failed. This also meant that Princess Phoenix wouldn't be in any danger for the time being. At least, before the old ancestor of the demonic beasts and sword lunatic grasped the method to control the token, she wouldn't be in any danger. This way, she would have enough time to plan her escape. After all, her master was from a primitive race. Since young, her master had always taught her that this was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Strength was the foundation of everything. No matter when, no matter what situation she was in, she mustn't give up easily. As long as there was a 1 in 10,000 chance, she had to think hard. Especially at such times, she had to be calm. Princess Phoenix drew in a deep breath. A trace of coldness appeared on her fair face. She had already regained her composure. Her pitch-black eyes stared at the old ancestor of the demonic beasts. To her, the threat of the old ancestor of the demonic beasts was much greater than Sword Lunatic. From her observation these few days, Sword Lunatic was at most a brainless fellow. No matter what he encountered, he would only use his fists to solve it. He was someone who didn't know how to use his brain. Such a person was basically no threat to her. On the other hand, the old ancestor of the demonic beasts was meticulous and didn't reveal any flaws. This made Princess Phoenix have no choice but to be wary of him. After all, he had grasped the soul search technique. She didn't know how many times the technique her master left on her could withstand. Once her soul was searched, she would only have a path of death. "Chimph, I'll leave you here for now," Sword Lunatic coldly spoke. The old ancestor of the demonic beasts looked at Princess Phoenix warily. After that, he indicated for Sword Lunatic to bring her away from this place. Not long after they left, the ground suddenly started to wriggle. Next, there was an invisible energy that gathered and instantly blasted the soil on the ground. Buzz! The violent energy, with the blasted soil as the core, formed a storm. However, even if someone were to pass by within a radius of 10 meters, they wouldn't notice anything unusual. The storm in the center was terrifying, but it was only limited to a radius of 10 meters. Dong dong dong! A deafening sound reverberated through the heavens and earth. From the blasted soil, an austere killing intent could be felt. An extremely cold aura permeated the air. Suddenly, a melodious and ancient voice rang out. Millions and millions of years of bitter cultivation, vowing to explore the secrets of reincarnation. Who is it that disturbed my cultivation? The voice contained a shocking murderous intent. Just a moment ago, he, who had been sleeping for billions of years while exploring the secrets of reincarnation, had been disturbed by a special force, causing his billions of years of cultivation to go to waste. Damn it! He looked up to the sky and roared furiously. The storm in the center gradually drilled into the exploded soil. Then, the terrifying sound was heard again. Pervasive sword chi. All sword cultivators in this world deserve to die. In the next instant, the land fell silent once more. Chaotic stone forest, heaven-shocking sword formation. After 3 years of cultivation, Fang Chen had gained a lot. However, every time he comprehended to a certain extent, he would reach a bottleneck. No matter how hard he tried, he could not understand the trajectory of the heaven-shocking sword formation. Even now, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration. The person who created the heaven-shocking sword array was definitely a supreme being. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so profound. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Fang Chen, who hadn't reincarnated, could be called the top sword cultivator in the chaotic realm. His attainment in Sword Dao was second only to Supreme Fu Jian. However, Supreme Fu Jian was a legendary supreme being after all, while Fang Chen was only a 9th-level saint. With such achievements, the world regarded him as the future of Sword Dao. After his reincarnation and recultivation, he recondensed the invincible sword principle, polished himself, and deeply imprinted the invincible sword principle into his flesh and blood. He rose from the ashes and finally raised the realm of the invincible sword principle to a great level. Although he didn't dare to say that his attainment in Sword Dao was the best in the world, he could at least be in the top 3. However, a sword cultivator with such an impressive record was trapped in the heaven-shocking sword formation, which made Fang Chen quite distressed. Fang Chen looked up and saw the descendants of the primitive tribes outside the heaven-shocking sword formation. Coldness flashed in his eyes. What a strange aura. Their bloodline seems to be very powerful. He could clearly feel that the perfect bloodline in his body was vibrating, and the vermilion bird bloodline seemed to have a slight change. Fang Chen couldn't think of anything else in the world other than the primitive bloodline that could cause the two most powerful bloodlines to move at the same time. In addition, their behavior was very strange. Furthermore, the secret skill they used to attack the heaven-shocking sword formation was never seen or heard of before. This made Fang Chen even more certain that they should be the descendants of the primitive tribes. Senior Leng Xian once said that there are not only descendants of the devouring demon clan in the broken space, but also descendants of the primitive tribes. These people should be the descendants of the primitive tribes. Fang Chen muttered, and a beautiful figure appeared in his mind. Princess Huang. Since he met Princess Huang in the soaring Phoenix mountain range, they had been through thick and thin together. Finally, under the strong oppression of the Ghost Manor Lord, he desperately stopped the Ghost Manor Lord and fought for a chance of survival for Princess Huang. I wonder how she is now. Fang Chen whispered, and then shook his head. Princess Huang's master was an expert of the primitive tribes. With the mysteriousness of the primitive tribes, they must have left a backup plan in her body. She shouldn't be dead. Then, if she didn't die, she should be coming to the cliff of death, right? Could it be that she is now at the cliff of death? At that time, the two of them had witnessed the heart of the heavenly dragon supreme. The latter's last words were for them to go to the cliff of death to find the Ghost Emperor's ghost weapon, and then let Princess Huang bring it back to the primitive tribes. Then, Princess Huang would definitely follow the heavenly dragon supreme's last wish. I wonder when I can get out. Fang Chen sighed. He was seriously injured, causing his cultivation realm to drop. Although he had recovered to the peak of the Saint King realm with the help of Leng Xian and the tempering in the broken space, he was still very far away from the Saint realm. Taking a deep breath, Fang Chen threw away the messy thoughts in his mind, and a trace of determination appeared in his eyes. The most important thing now was to train in the broken space as soon as possible and recover his cultivation realm. Only then would he have the ability to protect himself in the cliff of death and be qualified to fight for the Ghost Emperor's ghost weapon. Boom! Just as he was thinking, the descendants of the primitive tribes launched a new round of attacks on the heaven-shocking sword array. Vast power bombarded the heaven-shocking sword array, causing the entire chaotic stone forest to shake. However, the heaven-shocking sword array was very sturdy and unbreakable. Old Lin. The descendants of the primitive tribes focused their eyes on Old Lin, as if waiting for him to think of a solution. This sword array is extraordinary. It can't be broken by force. Looks like we only have one way. Old Lin looked at Fang Chen, who was at the center of the array. Chapter 38:17. The descendants of the primitive tribes had no choice but to take the initiative to communicate with Fang Chen. My friend, we are the descendants of the primitive tribes. May I know your name and which force are you from? After all, there were other forces in the shattered space apart from the devouring demon clan and the descendants of the primitive tribes. For example, the descendants of the human clan from the chaotic realm. Therefore, Elder Lin asked. He wanted to understand Fang Chen's situation before making his next move. Fang Chen looked up and saw Elder Lin and the others standing on the bluestone. They were blocked outside the shocking sword formation. Elder Lin asked with a smile. Descendants of the primitive tribes. In Fang Chen's mind, he recalled what Leng Xian had once said. In the shattered space, there were descendants of primitive tribes. What's the matter? Fang Chen asked. Obviously, he did not have a good impression of the descendants of the primitive tribes. They were only after the supreme sword intent contained in the shocking sword formation. My friend, this formation was left behind by the ancestors of the primitive tribes. Originally, we wanted to take the shocking sword formation with the token, but unfortunately, you beat us to it. Because of your appearance, the sword formation changed its trajectory and we are blocked outside. Therefore, I would like to ask for your help to let us in, Elder Lin said with a smile. Fang Chen smiled coldly. However, he did not want to fall out with the primitive tribes. Therefore, he shrugged and said, "To be honest, I entered the sword formation by accident. Who knew that the sword formation would change unpredictably? I have been trapped here for a long time and still can't find a way out." Hearing this, a cold murderous intent flashed across the faces of the descendants of the primitive tribes. "My friend, are you joking?" Elder Lin's words were full of threat. "I hope you can help us get the sword formation left behind by our ancestors." At the same time, he also told Fang Chen that the primitive tribes had absolute authority in the origin world. Even the devouring demon clan did not dare to casually start a war with the primitive tribes. One must know one's own limits. I believe fellow Daoist should be well aware of this. Old Lin continued to threaten, "If you can help us primitive clans, we will definitely remember your kindness. Once we leave this shattered space and return to the Forbidden Zone, our ancestors will definitely bestow great treasures upon you. At the very least, you won't have to worry about your life within the origin world with the protection of our primitive clans." "His life is not in danger?" Fang Chen asked. Seeing this, Old Lin was overjoyed. He seemed to think that Fang Chen was about to compromise. Who in this world can resist the temptation of my primitive race?" He thought to himself. "That's right. As long as you're willing to help, I swear in the name of the primitive tribe that you won't have to worry about your life in the origin world. No matter what danger you encounter, my primitive tribe will lend a helping hand," said Old Lin. Fang Chen pondered for a moment and said, "Then, what if I am hunted down by the devouring demon patriarch? Can you primitive tribes help me kill the chief of the devouring demon clan?" As soon as he said that, Elder Lin and the others sucked in a breath of cold air. Their faces instantly darkened. "Fellow, are you messing with us?" Old Lin said in an unfriendly tone. Although the primitive tribes were not afraid of the devouring demon tribe, the chief of the devouring demon tribe was an expert who stood at the top of the pyramid. His strength could not be described with words. If the chief of the devouring demon tribe wanted to kill someone, no one could protect them. Back then, if the primitive tribes and the humans of the chaotic realm had not schemed against the chief of the devouring demon clan and caused him to be injured and remain in closed-door cultivation, the chaotic realm might have been completely destroyed long ago. At that time, the primitive tribes had also suffered a great loss. Especially the battle at the Cliff of Death. Just thinking about it made their hearts tremble. "What? You were the ones who told me that as long as I was willing to help, your primitive tribes would protect me and ensure that my life in the origin world would not be in danger." Fang Chen shrugged. "Could it be that your primitive tribes are afraid of the chief of the devouring demon clan? No one can stop someone like the chief of the devouring demon clan if he wants to kill someone. Besides, who do you think you are? What right do you have to make the chief of the devouring demon clan personally attack you?" Before Elder Lin could explode, the others could not help but berate him. "Boy, I'll give you 15 minutes to think about it. I hope you don't go overboard." "That's right. Our primitive tribes have already given you enough face by treating you with respect. I hope you know your place. Since you are in the sword formation, you must have a way to open it. Today, if you don't open the sword formation, we will kill you." Everyone spoke one after another, threatening Fang Chen. Elder Lin's dark eyes also stared at Fang Chen. "Ha ha," Fang Chen sneered. He had long known that these descendants of the primitive tribes were up to no good. Now that they had exposed their true colors, they dared to threaten him? If they were the primitive tribes in the life forbidden zone, perhaps he would be afraid. However, although these people claimed to be the descendants of the primitive tribes, their bloodline was very thin and they had little to do with the primitive tribes. What right did they have to threaten him? "Before you, the devouring demon tribe also came. They also wanted to kill me, but in the end, I killed some of them and the rest retreated. If you want to die, you can try," Fang Chen said coldly. When Elder Lin and the others heard this, they were shocked. Then, they saw the corpses around Fang Chen. Those corpses belonged to the Saint King realm martial artists of the primitive tribes. The devouring demon tribe also came? Elder Lin kept thinking in his mind and his expression changed. Suddenly, he thought of something. Despicable. Humph, the devouring demon tribe really deserves to die. They couldn't break the sword formation and suffered heavy losses here. They purposely hid and let us attack the sword formation. Once we are injured, they will reap the benefits. At this moment, Elder Lin's mind suddenly became clear. It was no wonder that when he first arrived, he had sensed a faint aura of the devouring demon clan in the void. Now that he thought about what Fang Chen had said, it was very likely that this was a trap set by the devouring demon clan. Elder Lin, what should we do? The others looked at Elder Lin and asked for his opinion. Let's retreat for now. Since the devouring demon tribe had been here before, they must have hidden. This was a dangerous place. They should retreat first and think of a countermeasure. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After a while, Elder Lin and the others left the stone forest. In a hidden place, the Fog Young Master saw this clearly. He snorted and flicked his sleeves. He said coldly, "The descendants of the primitive tribes are really a bunch of good-for-nothings. They can't even break a sword formation and retreated. Young Master, the primitive tribes have interacted with the human race in the chaotic realm." The saint of the devouring demon tribe reminded him. "Humph, the primitive tribes in the life-forbidden zone have interacted with them. Those guys who broke the space only have one thought, which is to return to the life-forbidden zone. They will not cooperate with the human race in the sword formation." Chapter 38:18. Romance website. The primitive tribes were the natural enemies of the devouring demon tribe. They were born naturally and their bodies contained one of the most powerful bloodlines in the world. The descendants of the primitive tribes in the broken space had very thin bloodlines. There was only a slight bloodline connection between them. Their only hope was to return to the primitive tribes. But now, they realized that the stone forest was most likely a trap set by the devouring demon tribe. So, they quickly retreated without ensuring their safety. Fang Chen was a little stunned when he saw this. He did not expect the primitive tribe to retreat so decisively. Whoosh. It was good that they retreated. He had finally gained some understanding of the shocking sword formation. If he had more time, he might be able to understand the movement of the shocking sword formation. By then, he could rely on his strong swordsmanship to try to communicate with the supreme sword essence. Thinking of this, he sat cross-legged and continued to meditate. Far away, the devouring demon tribe was hiding, waiting for the orders of the young master of the thick fog. Humph, what a bunch of cowards. The young master of the thick fog said coldly, "Bring my letter to the Black Spirit King. Tell him that I have something to discuss with him." Yes, young master. The outside world naturally did not know what happened in the broken space. But Lung Xian had been paying attention to the broken space for the past few years. She had personally sent Fang Chen into the broken space. She wanted him to train in a life-and-death battle and quickly recover his cultivation. Only then could he survive in the Cliff of Death. She also had a premonition that there would be undercurrents in the Cliff of Death. Soon, there would be an earth-shattering war. By then, she would not be able to protect Fang Chen. Moreover, she had already fallen. Now, she only appeared in the form of a special spiritual body. Naturally, her combat power would not be as strong as when she was at her peak. Whoosh. Lung Xian, who was dressed in white, exuded a cold aura. Time could not leave any trace on her face. With her beautiful face, anyone would covet her. However, her heart belonged to someone else. Even if that person had fallen, she was still infatuated with him. Back then, you rejected me, not because you did not love me, but because you were afraid that I would be implicated when the war broke out, Lung Xian said to herself. The coldness in his eyes gradually disappeared and was replaced by a complicated expression. Memories flooded her mind as a handsome figure appeared before her eyes. She stretched out her hand, but the moment she touched the handsome figure, the latter instantly dissipated. Hoo hoo hoo. A cool breeze blew past and a tear hung from the corner of Lung Xian's eyes. She stretched out her fair little hand and gently wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. Although I don't know where you went, I believe that you're not dead. Your successor is the best proof. Fang Chen had been born in the primal chaos, which had been personally created by Autarch Fu Jian. Moreover, he possessed a perfect bloodline, and he had even been sent to the origin world by the Autarch. He had shouldered the heavy responsibility of saving the people of the primal chaos. The scene was extremely similar to what Supreme Fu Jian had experienced in the past. No matter who Fang Chen's master was, Leng Xian had already treated him as the successor of Supreme Fu Jian. Fang Chen's appearance in the origin world was enough to prove that the person she missed was not completely dead. It was very likely that he was hiding somewhere and plotting everything. Leng Xian shook her head and stopped thinking about it. Since I ran into him, I will do my best to protect him and help him grow. I hope that my efforts can help him complete your unfinished mission. Saving the people of the primal chaos was an extremely difficult task. If she failed, the primal chaos would be completely destroyed. Keek. Leng Xian, you dare come here? A sinister voice suddenly sounded from the void, followed by an illusory figure that appeared in front of Leng Xian. Piss off. Leng Xian gathered her thoughts and threw out a palm strike. Frosty aura swept through the world as countless ice shards shot out from her palm and blasted at the illusory figure. Thump thump thump. The illusory figure's body dissipated after being hit by the ice shards, but his body reformed once more after the ice shards dissipated. Leng Xian, we haven't seen each other for many years. Is this how you treat an old friend? An old friend? Leng Xian's face was covered with frost. She directly attacked without showing any mercy. She unleashed a fierce attack on the illusory black shadow. However, the illusory black shadow did not show any fear. Instead, it revealed a trace of a snicker. Boom boom boom. A deafening sound reverberated between heaven and earth. Soon, the battle attracted countless eyes. Let's go. Leng Xian did not want to stay any longer and wanted to leave. But at this moment, she realized that a dwarf was blocking her path. Are you in such a hurry to leave? The illusory figure's mocking voice came from behind. I have endured for so long for this day. If I let you leave unscathed, how can I establish myself in the cliff of death? Boom. The illusory figure and the dwarf joined forces to suppress Leng Xian. Leng Xian snorted and used a forbidden technique. The surrounding void was instantly frozen. In just a moment, she disappeared into the horizon. Catcher. The ice was forcefully removed, but Leng Xian was nowhere to be seen. Chase. The illusory figure and the dwarf looked at each other, their eyes filled with killing intent. The two experts chased after Leng Xian. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the end of the sky, the white-robed Leng Xian was flying rapidly. She used a forbidden technique to freeze the world to escape. However, she knew the strength of the illusory figure. It would not be long before he caught up. Hiss hiss hiss. She lowered her head and saw a wound between her thumb and index finger. Blood flowed out continuously and soon, her white robe was dyed red. Her head shook and she felt dizzy. However, she gritted her teeth and rushed into the black river ahead. Splash. There were slight waves in the black river before it returned to normal. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Not long later, the illusory figure and the dwarf arrived. They looked around but did not find any trace of Leng Xian. There is no path ahead. Where is she? The dwarf said coldly. The illusory figure lowered his head and stared at the black river, deep in thought. What do you mean? She jumped into the Soul River? The dwarf was surprised. Impossible, she wouldn't have that much courage. What a joke. That was the Soul River. In the huge cliff of death, countless experts were fighting for opportunities. However, no one dared to touch the Soul River. Her aura disappeared here. Look, there is blood by the Soul River. Ordinary people would not dare to come here. It must be her. The illusory figure said. In summary, Leng Xian must have jumped into the Soul River. She will definitely die if she jumped into the Soul River. The dwarf said. From his words, one could tell how terrifying the Soul River was.